Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. I am standing in for Chair Scharf and am also going to make an announcement that I may have to leave early tonight. In order to ensure that the meeting continues, I am going to suggest that we designate Commissioner Phillips, who happens to just sit to my left, to run the rest of the meeting if and when I must leave. Before we get started, would you kindly call the roll?
Actually, Chair Marder, we think we have to take a vote and a motion for that.
Okay.
For that to occur.
Could we,
After the roll.
after the roll, take a vote on that? I missed the roll piece, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Commissioner Metz?
Present.
Commissioner Tucker?
Present.
Commissioner Croft?
Present.
Vice Chair Mater?
Present.
Commissioner Phillips?
Present.
Commissioner Gupta?
Present.
For the record, 6 present.
Can you now call the roll designating Commissioner Phillips to stand in my place should I need to leave early?
Yes. Commissioner Metz?
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker? Commissioner Croft?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta, sorry.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater?
Yes. Great. Are there any agenda changes, additions, or deletions this evening?
There are no changes. I just wanted to mention that the 12-month calendar will be discussed at the future topics for upcoming meetings. So this is the alternate month when you have those discussions. So I just wanted to make sure I was highlighting that to the commission.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that rolling calendar?
Yes, the 12-month rolling calendar.
Would you say that again, please? The rolling calendar is discussed only every 2 months?
Every other month. So this is the month you would discuss the calendar. So I just wanted to make sure I was highlighting on here for future topics for upcoming meetings. So that is the discussion of the 12-month rolling calendar.
Why is the 12-month rolling calendar not discussed every month? This meeting, for example, 2 large agenda items came off the agenda, not a month, but days or weeks before the meeting. So why is it so hard to nail down a calendar that we can only even discuss it once a month?
So I think that would be a good discussion and when we get to that item on the agenda.
And while we're procedural, could I just ask, when commissioners aren't attending the meeting, especially the chair, I would suggest that we all be notified. It comes as a surprise that the chair is not here.
I'm not sure that we have ever sent out attendance in advance of the meeting publicly. Sometimes last-minute issues, personal issues arise that lead to unforeseen circumstances, and I would be concerned about exposing or highlighting those publicly. However, we do have a quorum.
I didn't say I needed a reason. I just said it ought to be disclosed that a commissioner, certainly chair, won't be attending.
So we do not actually do that for city council either, but respectfully understood your comment.
Is there any public comment at tonight's meeting? Okay, so to clarify, any members of the public that are interested in speaking on on items that are not on the agenda this evening?
Let me see. We do have a hand raised by NCAC. We'll let them talk. Oh, they put their hand down. No
Okay.
additional hands raised and no in-person comments.
Thank you. Can we proceed to the next topic, which is approval of the minutes? We actually have 2 months' worth of minutes to approve this evening. So I'd like to start with the minutes from the September 3rd meeting. Do I have any comments from the commissioners on those minutes?
I would like to make one change to the minutes.
Please.
Currently on, let's see, it says something in the minutes. I'm sorry, I should be a little more. Says on packet page 16, Commissioner Phillips met with Mayor Lowing and Vice Mayor Venker to discuss a lack of feedback to the UAC on its decisions, motions, and discussions. I'd rather have that clarified to say, on August 26th, Commissioner Phillips represented the UAC at a meeting of board and commission chairs and vice chairs with Mayor Lowing and Vice Mayor Venker. Among the issues discussed was a lack of feedback to the UAC, and then you can continue as is. It was not a special, just want to make it clear, this is a meeting of all the boards and commissions, not a special meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have that adequately documented, or would it be helpful for Commissioner Phillips to provide that for the record?
I'm happy to provide, I have it written.
Yeah, we could take those comments and incorporate it into the minutes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments on the September 3rd meeting?
Yes. I have sent an email just this afternoon, so it's not much time, and it's to Kaylee, and she's not here. So, and I don't know if procedurally this even works, since if I can't show all of you, I have no printouts. If I can't show you proposed changes, maybe it's all moot. But my list of items from September, many of them are minor. There are typos like Redwood versus Redwood City, or I dig a pipe, I don't dig it up, that kind of thing, you know, and so maybe not even worth bothering with. Then there are points I'd make that may be inappropriate for minutes, but there are a number of references or, you know, minuted remarks, if that's a word. We will agendize a certain topic. Like, for example, the topic of discussing the advisory function of UAC to council. It's stated that this will be agendized perhaps for December, and it has not been agendized. Or follow-up as to questions where commissioner asked such and such, there was no answer. For example, is gas used as a feedstock by some of our commercial customers? That question is left dangling. And so I suppose it's not appropriate to insert answers to questions post facto in the minutes, but it does leave an awkward record of we're going to do something and then we don't do it. So I will simply summarize by saying my email has a few minor suggestions that I don't think anyone would object to. I can't show them to you. And everything else should probably be disregarded in that email.
Thank you, Commissioner Trigger. Perhaps this is something that we can pick back up in that final agenda item.
Can I ask a question, which is if we do have comments on the minutes, and for example, Commissioner Tucker wrote them to Kaylee, what is the process for getting those into the minutes if we are emailing ahead of time? Who do you want those to go to?
So if the commissioner had a series of questions and also comments, to the extent that he had modifications or changes to the minutes, it would be appropriate for each of the commissioners to bring that forward in the open meeting, and we could incorporate those into the public record and make the associated changes. So that would be the best way to have those changes made for the record for the minutes. And then, you know, we are always open and appreciate questions from the commissioners if we need some clarification as we try to move forward the meeting in an efficient fashion.
So the solution would have been just like Commissioner Phillips, bring the physical copy, read it, give it?
Either that, Commissioner Croft, or I think if you were to provide it to staff early enough and ask us to bring copies for you, but obviously we would need some turnaround time for something like that, so that we would be able to coordinate that and be able to help artfully go through the information.
I'd like to mention for the public record and for the posterity of the minutes that my HP printer at home is not functioning. That was just a dumb joke.
Do I have a motion to approve the September 3rd minutes?
Motion to approve with Commissioner Phillips' amendment.
Seconded.
Could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft, Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta, Vice Chair Mater.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
We will now turn to the approval of the October 1st minutes. Does anyone have any comments or concerns about the minutes from October 1st? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the October 1st minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Could you kindly call the roll?
Commissioner Metz,
I'm going to abstain on this one since I wasn't in the meeting.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Mater.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 with 2 abstained. Okay, sorry.
Okay, we'll now turn to the Utilities Director report.
Appreciate that. So I just wanted to go through the city council recent approvals as part of the first item of business. So we had a resolution extending the city's participation to the Northern California Power Agency for their support services program for another 10 years to 2037. We also had the contract for the gas main replacement, project 25, that went to council. And we also amended our utility connection fees. So just an overview of the utility connection fees. These are the rates that are charged for development for the actual services that we're providing for the actual physical connection to the system. So we periodically update those rates. And these were from around 2019, so we're able to update those and make sure that we have adequate cost recovery. It also simplifies our billing process. So if it's a standard type of service or installation, that we are being as efficient as possible. So just wanted to mention that to the UAC.
Excuse me, is it okay to ask item by item, or do you want us to wait to the end?
No, please wait for the end. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. So the city manager mentioned at the city council meeting on Monday that the utilities was going to prepare a financial assistance for federal government employees and low-income residents that are being impacted by the federal administration in terms of the lack of funding for SNAP programs and some of the federal employees that are not being paid at this time. So staff is bringing forth an item for consent for the council to consider. What that would look like is that the customers on our rate assistance program would be automatically enrolled, so that they would not have automatic turnoffs. We would not be charging late fees. And on a similar vein, federal employees that are impacted by the shutdown would contact the utilities services, provide information that they're a federal employee, then that are impacted, and they would also be enrolled in this program. So we are bringing that back to council on Monday. I wanted to make sure that UAC was aware of that as well. Also on Monday, the council heard the wildfire mitigation audit from the city auditor. It was primarily based on our preparations. Utilities was a part of that audit, and very few findings, as we are actually undergrounding our overhead lines in the high threat zone areas. So that was highlighted in the audit report. I did also want to mention completed and submitted based on our 2020 filed wildfire mitigation plan. That has been reviewed by the California Wildlife Safety Advisory Board. They review all the submittals. Actually, Palo Alto was applauded for its process in undergrounding the line and actually inserting new sensors to AI sensors, frankly, to that we're a partnership with Stanford and some of the other surrounding communities. So that was a positive, and the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board would like to get some feedback on how that program is working. So that was, wanted to pass that on to this group. So every 5 years, the utility submits the Electric Integrated Resource Plan to the California Energy Commission on talking about our goals. Staff will be working on that program. And this also includes meeting our state requirements for the 60% renewable portfolio standard. That will be increasing in 2020, end of 2027, and needs to go to 52%, and by 2030, 60%. So I wanted to make sure that this commission knew of that. Also, CPAU is participating with the California Municipal Utilities Association for a customer satisfaction survey to residential electric and water service customers. It's a statewide survey for entities and for public-owned utilities throughout California. So we are part of that oversampling survey, so we will bring that back to the commission for their information. And then for our heat pump systems, in October, the utility is offering 2 new programs related to heat pump systems. This includes new rebates to cover the permit costs for heat pump water heaters and HVA systems, and a new refer a neighbor to this program, and a campaign to spread the word about how customers can move over to a heat pump water heater, and they can earn another $50 for every successful referral, where we have your neighbors switch over to that as well. And then the neighbor also receives additional $100 after completion of this installation. So we're really hoping we can spread that word. And my last is the actually introduction of our new utilities assistant director of water, gas, and wastewater, Reka Ipagunta. I'm going to have her step up briefly and just introduce herself to the group. So she is overseeing our water, gas, wastewater engineering operations.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Reka Ipagunta. I'm honored to step into the role of Assistant Director for Water, Gas, and Wastewater. My professional background spans over 2 decades in consulting, investor-owned utilities, and public service. I had spent some time in consulting, gaining my technical design experience in water and wastewater, spent several years for California Water Service Company, where I was involved in engineering and operational management, and then culminating in a commitment to public service at Alameda County Water District. So what drew me to Palo Alto is the unique utility structure here that provides a tremendous opportunity for long-term efficiency and service reliability. So I'm very thrilled to be here, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Welcome.
And that completes my report.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I'd just like to make one comment related to the heat pump topic that you mentioned. I have a friend who gas water heater busted and got a new heat pump water heater. He was just effusive. He sought me out because he knew I was on the commission. He was just effusive about what a great job that it got done overnight, I guess on a Sunday. He went for the 110 volt water heater, so he didn't have to do any wiring and such. But anyway, he just thought it was a great job, and I just wanted to mention that.
Appreciate the feedback.
Commissioner Tucker?
You mentioned, gave an update on connection fees. I think I heard the word amended. I think it was electric. It kind of went past me, though. Last month, or last meeting, we talked at some length about, I think, similar or maybe the same connection fees. I brought up the fact that this came before finance and the increases were, to my mind, staggering. I realize they're all cost plus and cost related, but nonetheless, what is the connection between what you just mentioned and what we discussed last month?
So the connection is as part of the commission, we were directed and we are providing updates in terms of what items have gone to city council in terms of their approval. So that was the intent of my report out in terms of what has gone to city council in terms of updating those fees and providing a general overview of kind of some of the high-level activities and items that have gone to city council.
Are those the same fees that we talked about last month?
These are the connection fees that have gone. So again, we provide back what has gone to council. That was the feedback we received in trying to fulfill that obligation.
It would have helped if you'd simply made that connection since we talked about it last month. Another question is on satisfaction surveys. Is it, I believe we do, well, I believe these are much more than Palo Alto. You mentioned some sort of consortium or larger region. And we do these every year or two. I get that also. But is it possible to see in advance what the survey will be or how it will be addressing Palo Alto customers?
So it is a standardized oversampling for Palo Alto. So they do a statewide survey, and then utilities can request an oversampling for those standardized questions. We'll bring that back to the commission so you can see those questions and kind of the responses and how we rate against, frankly, our peer utilities across the state. So there are some standardized questions in there as well. So more than happy to bring that back to the commission.
But it sounds like they're standard, we don't administer, so there's not much that we can do to shape or affect it, and therefore there's no reason to look at it in advance? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what I'm trying to convey, is these are standardized questions, and having them universally applied to the agency so we can have those comparisons is very useful.
Do we do any sampling beyond that of our own, that we control? Satisfaction sampling, surveying, I should say?
Yeah, so there are surveys that the city performs across for all the different departments, and there's areas of focus that occur on different areas of the city, whether that's the sustainability and climate action or other activities. So we continue to do that as well.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry. Commissioner Gupta?
Thank you for the report out. I had a question if you had any updates for our residential fiber deployment tonight.
No, we do not have that. And what I'd like to do is we'll put that as part of the 12-month. We do have an update that we'll be providing on that as well. So we can discuss that further in detail. Would appreciate any questions that this commission would have to make sure that we address them. But I'd like to kind of keep that as part of the agenda if that works.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on to agenda item number 3, I'm wondering if we can get some technical assistance here for Commissioner's restarted iPad.
Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, we'll move on to new business. Let's start with item number 3, recommendation to approve the draft 2026 Utilities Legislative Policy Guidelines update and to receive the update on 2025 state and federal legislative and regulatory activity. The CEQA status of this is that it is not a project. Before we have the presentation, are there any public comments?
If anyone from the public would like to speak on item number 3, please raise your hand or press *9 now.
So I will introduce.
No hands raised, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Dr. Lena Perkins, our Senior Resources Planner, and also Riley Yalian, who is also our Resource Planner in our group, and they'll give the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners and Mayor. Let's see. Who is going to bring up the presentation? Okay. Will I be able to see the presentation? Okay. It'll be here. Okay. And while we're waiting, I wanted to really acknowledge all the work that Riley Yalian has done. He's a new addition to our team, and we have really jointly covered a lot this year. This year has been a lot, and it's only November. So with that, I will launch into this 2025 legislative policy update and the draft 2026 utilities legislative policy guidelines. So I've kept this brief because I know you have a lot to cover throughout this meeting, but we can go to the next slide. There we go. Do you want
Can you switch the view, please?
So, I'm just going to pause for a second. Yeah, go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. Great. So this is the legislative update, some regulatory aspects, but on the state side, it was a very, very heavy, busy year. We had the reauthorization of the cap and invest, no longer cap and trade, cap and invest, which means that that program is now going to persist through 2045. And in general, that was pretty close to a clean reauthorization, and so the utilities maintained most of their percentage of funds that they were going to receive from those auctions. And so we worked extremely hard for that, and we were texting back and forth with people on the floor for how to navigate some of these tricky issues, as well as an exciting update. And so that's the first bullet in AB 1207 and SB 840. And then the second update, which is really, a generational change, is AB 825, which I remember in 2016 when we failed to create a broader market legislatively. And this, although it's a voluntary market, it creates a new oversight board that is beyond the state of California, that is going to allow utilities beyond California to feel comfortable joining, so that we can have a broader optimization of the best, cheapest, cleanest resources across the Western US of anyone who wants to join. So that is really a landmark bill. We were involved, but really the general manager of NCPA, Randy Howard, has devoted a lot of the last 2 to 3 years of his life to that. So that came down to the wire, and that went through. And so that's really exciting as well. We did have a bill, some language inserted into a bill that would have preserved Palo Alto's hydropower current standing within the RPS legislation. However, the other part of that bill, so two-part bill, had CPUC language in it, and that would have required a discussion of certain rate increases rather than those to be approved on consent from the CPUC. So that had nothing to do with us. We're not regulated by the CPUC. The governor acknowledged that in his veto, but vetoed it because he did not want any delay in the CPUC hearings. So, that, and he supported the intent behind our part of the bill. So we'll likely bring that back in the coming year. On the federal side, there are some possible streamlining for both wildfire mitigation and electricity transmission projects. And then, which is a positive, and the positive and negatives represent financial outcomes, not political views, just to be clear. And then the tariffs are expected to increase generation and transmission costs, as well as the HR1, the One Big Beautiful Bill. It ramps down renewable energy tax credits, so that's expected to increase costs for new renewable projects. And then there was pretty substantial staffing cuts, especially on affecting us in hydropower and transmission, which we have seen reduce some of the operational efficiency and will likely delay maintenance projects in the future. So next slide. And so the other part of this update is just to bring these evergreen guidelines that were approved in their current form roughly in 2018. They're very similar. And just to bring those to your attention, these are very broad guidelines and they're intended to be evergreen that way because we have to make day-to-day decisions. So unless the direction of the council is changing in a big way on a big issue, for more than a year, these are not intended to reflect day-to-day small changes. And the policy guidelines, you should have them in your packet. They emphasize local control, affordability, and locally designed decarbonization. And then, there are many new UAC members and council members, so we wanted to bring these to your attention, let you know that because almost everything in utilities is highly regulated, and there's an increasing number of pieces of legislation touch utilities that we need, independent, although aligned with the city, independent authority to have the utility director weigh in or staff weigh in all these regulatory matters. So after UAC feedback, these draft 2026 guidelines, which are unchanged from 2023, other than a few kind of grammatical changes, will go to policy and services, and then to the city council. So with that, I can take any questions, and when we're ready to move on to a motion, I'm ready for that.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Phillips?
So why now? Why are you looking to get it reapproved now? And is this the first time it's been reapproved since 2018?
No, it's, they've been tweaked since 2018, and honestly, they've been kind of pruned back from 2018 to 2023. Very, very similar in 2020. So 2018, 2019, 2020, I think 21, 22, and 23. Given that they didn't change for 3 years, and all that's required is a staff review annually by the resolution, which is Resolution 9668. This is more to make the UAC aware. That's all, and combined with the legislative update. What's required is council approval for changes.
So when was the last time the council saw it? Was it 2018?
In 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Gupta?
I have a set of questions, so I'll just go through all of them together. First, I want to just commend you two for tracking over 100 bills. That is a really challenging thing to do, so thank you. I really appreciate that. I just had a few questions from the packet. If we look at packet page 40, you speak to the CARB's transition away from free allowances to gas corporations. And then there's a line here that says that the new auction proceeds must be returned to customers as a rebate. I was just wondering, is the total effect of your statements there suggesting that we don't need to comply with that, or are we now required to pass these along as rebates?
So we're actually, CARB has a great deal of leeway in how they interpret that legislation into rulemaking, and they are doing that in the next month, basically. But a strict reading of that legislation POUs are not gas corporations, and so they are not, CARB is not required to take all of the natural gas allowances from natural gas POUs such as us. They still could.
I see.
And as an electric distribution utility, we should, on the electric side, we should receive the revenue from, well, we should receive allowances from the natural gas investor-owned utilities, and we have to monetize those allowances, and that revenue needs to be passed back to customers in monetary form. So we can't keep that and use it for programs.
I see.
For example.
Is that a change from how it operated before?
Yeah, yes, that's a change as of this legislation in October.
I see. Thank you, that helps. And then I had a question on AB 130 on the building codes. Is it true that the effect of this is suspending all changes to building codes till 2031?
Yes, I believe so, and I think that's why we rushed our changes. And we were one of, a handful of cities in California that was able to get codes approved, 2 different codes changes
great.
approved before.
Oh, thank you. No, thanks for explaining that. And then you made a comment on some of the federal actions by this administration, including energy dominance. And so energy dominance has been this movement on the right, and now there's this rising movement on the left called energy abundance. So I think we're going to see a lot more attention paid to trying to cut regulations, expand the energy market, and build more energy for America's future. And I do wonder if there's going to be more opportunity, because much of what you've written here, I think, is accurate, that it seems to have actually eliminated our chances of energy dominance or abundance. But it would be great if, in this new landscape where maybe both parties could agree that there might be opportunities for utilities. So I just wanted to highlight that kind of rising movement on the left as well. I did want to highlight the risk on the Western Area Power Administration that provides approximately 40% of CPAU's electricity supply. So you presented the staffing shortages there. Could you give us kind of your sense of the risk right now to Palo Alto in operations, and how we can kind of help understand that, and if there are any options we can do as a customer of that to improve the situation?
Sure. So the Western Area Power Authority is under the DOE, and they are responsible for wheeling the power from these dams to us and marketing that power. So they do the transmission part of it and the marketing piece of it. And then the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, under the Department of Interior, actually has their hand on the lever of the turbines making the power. So we deal with both of them, although we're a direct customer of WAPA and the DOE. And in general, the folks that are actually generating the power, the Bureau of Reclamation, have had deeper cuts than the Western folks in Department of Energy, and have been under a hiring freeze and they've had more staff reductions. And so because they are the ones that we've been working with, that I have been working with for about 8 years to really try to optimize when they generate that power, if they're kind of below minimum staffing on their real-time desks, then we are going to make less money when they are generating power. And so that's a pretty substantial risk, because it's a flexible resource, and we worked really hard with them to kind of peak that and get as much value out of it as possible, because these are old dams and old machines that need a lot of care and feeding. So that's one aspect. Western also maintains transmission, federal transmission. Being the federal government, the federally owned transmission does not have the same wildfire liability that other transmission has.
If I could also add, Dr. Perkins has been highly involved in this and really a leader in the area. We also increase our engagement with Northern California power agencies. many of those other members are also part and are impacted by this. So we do leverage our joint power agencies as well and our membership and as well. Further, the city of Palo Alto does do advocacy to DC to talk through these issues, and we meet with folks on both sides of the aisle, and also the departments of Interior and Energy and WAPA as well. So I just want to let you know, it's not just kind of the boots on the ground here. We do advocacy at all levels, and we're able to talk to both sides of the aisle. So we are absolutely engaged in these activities and advocate for Palo Altans.
Thank you very much for being on top of this.
Yeah.
It's very much appreciated.
On that note, I'll be in Folsom tomorrow at 8 a.m.
And then last question, and then I did have a motion, but maybe we can save motions to amend to the end after comments. I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, you can finish your questions, and then there are other questions, and then we can have a motion, and then you would move to amend that motion, and then I'm going to need assistance.
Sure, sounds good, thank you. So my last question. And on packet page 44, we write that that there was a rescission of the waiver that canceled California's 2035 ban on non-zero emission vehicles, although the legality of this is being challenged by the state. I know one of our issues as a utility, and part of why we're seeing utility rate increases, is because we're being required to replace very large vehicles that have traditionally been ICE vehicles with EV replacements that are substantially more expensive, and sometimes those replacements don't even exist yet. Does this mean that we have more flexibility now in our purchasing options for replacing those vehicles?
So the waiver, so these are separate issues.
I see.
Because as a government and a public utility, we are still subject to the ACF part of that, but the private fleets are not. But we are working to get flexibility and essentially individual waivers for specific reliability needs.
Thank you.
Sorry, we use three-letter acronyms all the time, so that's Advanced Clean Fleets. And also, we do have policies within the city of Palo Alto in terms of looking at EVs or electrify our fleet as well. So just wanted to mention that just in context. So there's a state requirement, and we're actively engaged in what that means for our utility and our fleet. And also, we work very well with our fleet department and our public works department here on what vehicles that we need. And we are doing a lot in the kind of the light duty vehicle realm in terms of those replacements.
Thank you.
Commissioner Croft?
Yeah, thanks. I have a question. It's not directly related to the guidelines, but it is, we're going to hit finance the projected rates later today. And I know at some point we have seen the budget. I don't recall what the line item is for this, but I was hoping you could just give us some color on what is the cost of maintaining our kind of lawyers, or our cost of the, handling these legislative issues. Has it been higher this year? Do we expect it to be higher going forward? Because is it within the operations budget? I'm curious where it falls within our city budget. Does it fall directly in the utilities budget for these activities? And then just trying to get a sense for when we talk about the finances later. This is kind of invisible to me right now unless I were to go back to the old budget and look for it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so all the utilities, legislative and regulatory advocacy is within the utilities budget. It's not within the city budget. The city has a separately funded program, although we coordinate wherever there's opportunities. Because the financial stakes of these changes in the law and changes in regulatory are so high, we devote substantial staff time to it, to many activities, and the budget is roughly $500,000 a year for that, and that's included, and we basically share, we are members of CMUA, which is California Municipal Utilities Association, and then so we leverage them for lobbying, and Director Alan Curatori actually sits on the board of directors of CMUA, so they're quite responsive to us this year. And then we also have Northern California Power Agency, which we're a founding member of, and we really leverage them and their lobbyists, and we interact directly with their lobbyists, and we interact directly with lawmakers and legislative staff, and then regulatory staff as well. So we kind of, because that's shared across 16 utilities, that is cheaper.
Great, so that, sorry,
Can I just
to
clarify
finalize.
something on a citywide level? So as Lena mentioned, we do have a citywide legislative contract for lobbying. We have it at the local, state, and federal level. It is a retainer contract, so it's a flat monthly. And so yes, last year was a very busy year across, frankly, all of our activities, but they don't charge by the hour. So from that standpoint, we were obviously highly engaged with them. Utilities is one of the pieces that feed into that work. And then in addition to that, as Lena has identified, because utilities is so specific, we do leverage our partnerships with NCPA, which we are a member of and pay into, to have a consortium and frankly, more lobbying power. Because it's not simply the city of Palo Alto, but Northern California Power Agency has a number of power agencies looking to influence and make appropriate change. So I think there's the kind of citywide level that's happening, and then as Lena identified, the more utility specific as well. And I will also say, just anecdotally, you see Lena and Riley here, more of their staff time was dedicated to managing and tracking these issues over the past year, which means simply other projects are getting deprioritized in efforts to prioritize their time and efforts on these timely issues. And so you see those ebbs and flows.
Great, so it sounds like $500,000 a year, and it's consistent over the years. It's not like it's all of a sudden going way up.
Other than Lena's time.
I have a variable rate, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, if we're done with, Commissioner Tucker?
Sorry. Yeah, I'd love just a story or an anecdote that in ways that CPAU advocates, and maybe tying it to the guidelines, which apparently are there on a fairly evergreen. How do these guidelines let you act or react more quickly? And maybe is there a story from 2025 or the last?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, you know, going back to 2009, the guidelines almost looked more like a work plan because we're mostly engineers and economists. And so we had, you know, make sure to handle this on the federal hydropower, make sure to handle this on the wildfire, make sure to handle this on the transmission. And in some ways, like a legal read of that means that if you write so many things down, if it's not written down, it's sort of, do you need to seek clarification if you can weigh in on it? And with the state becoming so highly regulated of everything, that meant that we couldn't get fast enough turnaround for like, hey, is it okay to weigh in on this versus having broader guidelines that we make sure align with the city guidelines. And so in terms of anecdotes, we have a lot. You know, I am going to Folsom tomorrow to meet with the federal hydropower leadership to go over how they are prioritizing their limited staff time for both maintenance and operations and optimizing the project, as well as their markets folks, because they are putting that project into the expanded day-ahead market with huge contractual implications in the tens of millions of dollars per year for Palo Alto. So I'm doing that tomorrow. Right now, as Commissioner Gupta spoke to, CARB has the discretion, the California Air Resources Board, has the discretion to essentially reallocate and take away all the revenues from our natural gas GHG allowances and to distribute them to electric distribution utilities. So we would get a slice of that pie, but those revenues would not be available to run local decarbonization programs. And given the work plan and the effort that goes into the local decarbonization programs and all of the legal review, we have a letter to, for the mayor to sign. And we have a 9-workday turnaround for our only opportunity to weigh in on that regulatory matter, and the mayor will have 5 workdays to review that, so.
Thank you. And I also note that the staff report does a really nice job of going through a number of the legislative updates and then bulleting the advocacy work that you did, so appreciate that. In the list of failed regulatory or legislative efforts, and the first one was hydropower treatment, I will say it was hard as a reader to know which of these matter, which of these are the greatest setback. Are we happy or sad that as Palo Alto CPAU that they failed? I take it that the hydropower one that you mentioned was the most consequential, and I found the description, the write-up, difficult to parse. So I can't really sense how consequential, but let's please move on. The last thing I want to raise on this one is my understanding the most significant regulatory happening in the utility space in California this past year is not on this report, but Director Kurotari reminded me offline that we are, Palo Alto, not governed by CPUC, and that changed as I read it. I'm totally novice to regulatory utility matters, but this time of, slice of day pricing, or not pricing, slice of day RA seems to be the biggest thing to roil the sector. Specifically, like up to now, it's been good enough to say, we've got resources for the month, based on our monthly usage, not hour by hour, the worst hour of the worst day of the month, have you got that covered? And I do want to just bring this up. I appreciate the offline comment, Alan. My question, though, is I didn't quite understand what Palo Alto has done something to model, I think was your word, for this. And could you just take a moment, since it is the biggest thing, unless you disagree, in the regulatory space, what's our response to it?
So as a public-owned utility, we are not regulated by the CPUC. So that is a point just to make as a matter of fact. In terms of, so PG&E, investor-owned utilities, the CCAs that are partnered with PG&E are regulated by the CPUC. We, as a municipal-owned utility, a public-owned utility, are regulated by the city council. They're our governing board. So the slice a day, we could probably have a long discussion on that, but what I can tell you is that we do shape our load. We have the ability to shape our load because of our resources. We're talking about the hydropower and other resources. We've talked about battery storage projects as well. So we have that ability to shape our load, and we work through Northern California Power Agency. They are our scheduler, and they do a lot of scheduling for a lot of all the partner agencies. So we are essentially covered in that regard. We could have a long dialogue on that, but I think that's kind of beyond what the discussion is here.
I don't want to go there, but it sounds like what you're saying is that CPAU was ahead of this curve. We had already done this. In other words, we're in a position to verify our RA on all of our power purchase agreements on an hourly basis, so this worst hour of the worst month, before CPUC went around to tell our competitor, our neighbor, IOUs to do this. I don't know if this gives us an advantage or, that will reflect on the bill, but anyway, that's good to know because it seems like a big problem. We talk a lot about time of use and having matching and our resource plan, and it's good to know that we're time sliced already before they told us to be.
Okay, well, in the effort to get Dr. Perkins to Folsom on time tomorrow morning, do we have a motion to would you like to bring up the
Yes,
motion that you would
could we
like to
advance?
propose?
Yeah. It is here. Yeah, staff recommends, do you want to read it, or would you like me to?
Go ahead.
Staff recommends that the UAC recommend the Policy and Services Committee recommend that the City Council to approve the draft 2026 Utilities Legislative Policy Guidelines update and accept the staff report providing an update on state and federal activities in 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes.
Second? Okay, great.
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Gupta.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a small amendment I'm going to propose to our policy guidelines in this 2026 update. Going through our recent gas decommissioning studies and our conversations around the gas COSA made me realize how much of a limitation Prop 26 and its related Proposition 218 are to the city's efforts to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, decarbonize, and advance rate designs that would be beneficial for those goals. And we have an 80-30 goal that's coming up. In our guidelines, number 8, we say advocate for fair cost allocation and support the principle of beneficiary pays, which to me suggests a continued support of Proposition 26 and 218. I'd like to add a small addition to that, just a small carve out. So it would be advocate for fair cost allocation and support the principle of beneficiary pays, comma, and this is the addition, while maintaining flexibility to support rate designs and policies that advance beneficial electrification and decarbonization in the public interest. And the goal for this amendment is to give our staff the flexibility that if an opportunity arises in the legislative landscape, that we can take hold of that and advocate for providing flexibility in rate design in the future.
Could I get some assistance in how to manage this proposed amendment?
Yeah, this is a friendly amendment, so as the mayor just identified, you would want someone to second that amendment, and then you can discuss it.
Do we have a second for Commissioner Gupta's amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a second. We are now opening the floor for discussion of the revised amendment. Do commissioners have questions, comments?
I would like to hear the staff respond to the amendment, and I don't know if you need to read it again to be absolutely clear, or I'd love to hear the staff's feedback on that.
Yeah, I'd love to have the text in front of me. I think it's at the UAC's discretion. But I want to be, I guess, I would kind of love a legal opinion just because Prop 26 is part of the Constitution. And so threading that needle with the language of the amendment, I think would just, I'm not sure if there's a way to carry the intent of this without amending the guidelines right here, maybe a legal interpretation if there is support from the UAC for it. Would you mind reading it one more time?
Sure, absolutely. So the amendment would add a comma after the sentence as is and read, while maintaining flexibility to support rate designs and policies that advance beneficial electrification and decarbonization in the public interest. And the purpose is if there are conversations in the future, which I think there may well be on changing or modifying Prop 26, I'd like the city to be in a position to be able to support that.
What's the item number?
Oh, this is number 8.
8, okay.
I guess my recommendation would be to make sure we run this through the city legal staff before settling on final language if there is support.
Absolutely.
Hello, I don't know if anybody knows. Can anybody hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, this is Amy, your legal staff. I'm the assistant city attorney, and I'm beaming in tonight for mostly to look at the gas COSA item, but we can talk about this too. So I have to say at the start, I always kind of understood number 8 on this list of policy guidelines to be talking about beneficiary pays when Palo Alto was advocating for its own interests in kind of wider state issues or transmission issues. We're wanting like people who are using transmission lines to pay their fair share and that type of thing. Granted, 8's pretty high level, but if you want to add the blurb in there that Commissioner Gupta put in, that's fine. I mean, these are policy considerations, and Prop 26 is going to apply either way. So that's always going to be a consideration that's kind of out there, whether it's written down in one of these bullet points or not.
Thank you.
I would be curious just what your operational response is, as Commissioner Croft asked, like, is this a good idea? And maybe related question, since it's in number 8, and I take it from the attorney's comment a moment ago, what does it mean beneficiary pays in this context?
Yeah, so it means cost allocation by cost causation. So in the transmission system, for example, those lines are really sized by demand, but the charges are given volumetrically in the transmission system. And so, that is, volume doesn't cause the size and the cost. And so we're on record for advocating for a demand-based transmission charge, as an example. So that is generally how this is applied. So given our illustrious attorney's opinion on that, I think that electrification and decarbonization has been a long-standing emphasis now, of the UAC and council. So I think that highlighting it, I don't see that changing in the next 5 years, right? So I think that's kind of my litmus test, and it's not overly prescriptive to bind our hands, but it's kind of the end.
Sorry, I wish I had the text. I see number 10, support government action that cost effectively reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So we're addressing greenhouse gas emissions here. We are promoting locally designed electrification programs. We have in number 13, supporting trades and technical disciplines to the benefit of electrification and grid mod. So we already have several topics related to, so what are how is this different?
I reviewed those. None of those get at the problem that Prop 26 poses for our utility, and that our rate design is constrained. We cannot consider electrification goals under Prop 26 above the reasonable cost allocation standard. I think as our state attempts electrification and decarbonization, there's going to be many conversations over the coming years about this limitation, that we will need more flexibility in rate design in order to achieve our decarbonization and greenhouse gas reduction goals. So this gives staff the guidance that we're not just advocating for fair cost allocation, et cetera, but if there's an opportunity in the state, the legislative landscape, to reconsider parts of Proposition 26 and 218, we've effectively green-lighted that for them so they can pursue that. And none of the other items touch on that.
Are we sure that because of RECs and other monetary instruments for accounting for greenhouse gas emissions that isn't already included in the concept of fair cost allocation?
Yes, so I can give you, like, a clear example is a member of the public wrote in about, and this is a future Gas COSA discussion, about how G2 meter costs have fallen under the new rate design, and that goes against the city's electrification goals. And part of that is we're constrained by the reasonable cost allocation standard, and did not consider the city's electrification goals in rate design. And that is prescriptive by Proposition 26. And so if there are opportunities in the future to modify that and give us that flexibility, I think that would be a good thing for our city's climate goals.
Point of procedure, do I need to accept the amendment, or I'm just curious what the procedure is here. Do I need to accept the amendment, or can I reject the amendment and then it has to be voted on without the amendment and then voted on with the amendment?
You vote on the amendment first,
I see.
and then based on what happens there, that's either incorporated or not, and then you vote on the amended motion or the original motion if the amendment fails.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for clarifying. Are there any final questions or comments related to the amendment to the motion? Okay, if not, can you please call?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
No.
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater.
No.
So,
Motion passes 4-2.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay.
motion carries 4-2, sorry.
So now what
Now we
happens
will
is-
vote on the revised recommendation, the revised motion. Is there any well, it's okay. Are there any further comments on the revised motion? Hearing none, could you please call the roll on that?
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. We will now move on to Agenda Item 4. Staff recommends that the Utilities Advisory Commission recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution approving the 2026 Natural Gas Cost of Service Analysis Report, amending rate schedules G1, Residential Gas Service, G2, Residential Master Metered and Commercial Gas Service, G3, Large Commercial Gas Service, and repealing G10, Compressed Natural Gas Service. We will begin with a staff presentation. We will then have the UAC committee provide comments on that staff presentation, reflecting their extensive discussions in committee. We will then ask for public comment, and finally, we will open the floor to commissioner discussion.
So let me just kick this off. So we have Lisa Belair, she's our Senior Resources Planner, and Carla Daly, our Assistant Director of Resources, will be giving the presentation. I did want to first appreciate and acknowledge the subcommittee members, Chair Scharf, who's not here tonight, Commissioner Gupta, and Commissioner Phillips for their support in processing this in a very timely manner. I know it was a heavy lift, and staff was really appreciative of your comments and your care in putting this together. I'm going to have Ms. Belair introduce some of our team members that are remote as well. We would like to just kind of provide this presentation. I did want to mention that this presentation included some guiding principles that went through Finance Committee and also approved by the City Council. We incorporated that presentation here so you see exactly what's going to the rest of the committee and also to the full City Council. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Belair.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I wanted to introduce Amber Geschwend. She is with the cost of service, she's a cost of service consultant with the firm EES. We also have, as you know, Amy Bartell, Assistant City Attorney, on the Zoom call, and Claire Collins, who is outside counsel from Hanson and Bridget, joining us. So if there's questions on this item, they can help to weigh in. I think that the presentation's being pulled up, but I just want to give you the overview that this item is seeking the UAC's recommendation that the City Council approve the 2026 gas cost of service study analysis report and adopt the revised rate schedules that we've attached. These proposed designs are designed to ensure equity among the customer classes and maintain compliance with the cost of service principles, as well as being consistent with the council's approved design principles that Alan just described. And as Alan mentioned, we worked closely with the UAC subcommittee on the gas cost of service study to develop the recommendations in this report. So in the presentation, just as a little overview, I'm going to talk about our stakeholder engagement, the places that we've been this year, going through all of the different presentations and reports that we've brought forward. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about trying to summarize. This is a very comprehensive report, but I'm going to try to summarize in some a few slides an overview of what the major changes are. And then I'm going to also talk through each of the principles that the council approved and talk about providing some information responsive to those principles, as well as how the study is responsive to those principles. Let's go to the next slide. So in April, staff brought the 2025 cost of service study to the UAC and to the Finance Committee, and some concerns were raised there about the impact of that study on residential customer rates. So the Finance Committee directed for staff to return to the UAC for further review of the study, and the council also directed that staff would bring the study back to the UAC. Additionally, the Finance Committee also recommended to go and really take a look at our gas design principles. And so this slide goes through the different meetings that we had. And then in September, the council did adopt those 5 design principles. And okay, next slide. This highlights again what you've already heard, which is that we did meet with the subcommittee. We met with the subcommittee 4 times from August through October, and that really allowed for those committee members to do an in-depth review, although it was on a quick timeline, and provide those report outs to the UAC. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the team did a thorough updating every line item, every cost, all the load forecasts, load information, and usage information. This slide just distills that into 4 different changes. And I'm not going to go through them in detail on this slide because they can get really technical really quickly. So I have 1 slide dedicated to each of these refinements, and I'll try to explain it as clearly as I can to try to make it clear what the drivers are for the study changes. Next slide, please. So the first refinement is to update the monthly service charge and make sure that it more accurately reflects the customer-related costs. So what we've done is include the cost of every single customer's meter and accounted for it in a comprehensive calculation of weighted average meter cost. With this information, then we're able to calculate the number of customers weighted by meter cost.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
What is cost of meter, please? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. When we install the meter, there's the materials of purchasing the meter and related materials, and then there's the labor cost of installing the meter. So we tabulated what that cost is at current costs for every customer.
So not to read it, to monitor it, to maintain it over time, just to put the thing in.
Correct. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So one of the main
Sorry,
goals...
one more question on that. Is there like an amortized over a certain number of years? because this is an annual fee that people are incurring, so I'm just curious if it's assuming like a 10-year life or
Okay,
20.
and I'm going to get to that a little bit. That's a great question as well. The study is using that information to calculate a number of customers weighted by meter cost. And then it's using that information to allocate or split costs across customer classes. So it isn't directly taking those meter costs and charging them. It's using that information to develop like if we look at our number of customers in each customer class, we can't necessarily weight each customer the same amount because it costs more to serve a customer that has a larger meter. It requires a larger service line, it requires a larger amount of time, and so there's a higher cost to serve a customer with a larger meter.
And would they all have the same useful life? So it's kind of fair to allocate it that way? Or?
Well, we can get into this a little bit more, but what we did is we used the current cost of replacement so that it's comparable across all of the customers and customer classes. Maybe I could try to go through the slide, and then we can see if there's other questions. It is really confusing and difficult to explain, so I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
I'll try to hold. I do want to hear what our UAC says, so I should probably refrain.
Yeah, let's let Lisa at least get to the end of the slide and then ask questions if we don't mind. I just want to be sensitive to staying on schedule tonight.
Great. And it is really important to dig into the questions on this one. This is one of the primary drivers of the increase for residential customers, so I appreciate the questions. And so this meter weighting update does result in a larger allocation to residential customers, and this is because the prior method relied on representative meter costs that did not reflect the total service demands of different meter sizes as fully as this method does. So it comprehensively takes into account, as I mentioned, the costs of labor, the materials costs for each customer's meter, and it is necessary to make this update to refresh the rates using the best available information and to reflect the latest costs so that the rates are fair and cost-based. And what we have on the slide is a table that shows the monthly meter service charges, and you can see the current rates in the first column. So for residential, you can see that it's increasing from the current to recommended by 6.4%. And for large commercial, you can see it's increasing as well. Now for the G2, which is the multifamily master metered and commercial customer class, currently that customer class all has the same monthly service charge, and then under the recommendation, there's 3 different service charges depending on the meter capacity. And that gets me into talking about the second refinement. So if there's questions here on this slide, let's return to those.
Clarification questions only? Commissioner Tucker?
Could I ask, what is, you mentioned representative meter cost. What is representative meter cost? That's apparently how we do things now, but now we're moving away from this.
Yes, so in the previous study, there was a representative meter used to develop this weighting factor for each of the customer, for the number of customers.
I just don't understand the word
class.
representative. I don't know what you mean.
Okay, so what we did in this study is we tabulated the cost of every single customer's meter. And then what they did in the previous study is selected a representative or middle customer for each of the customer classes. So that's the difference.
Almost anecdotally, or a median or mean, or, I mean, you just took
Well, in the staff report, we have a table that shows what the meter was that was selected. But in this study, we're using the best available information to tabulate every customer's meter.
Okay, I'll pass. I mean, I read the staff report carefully. I didn't see or grok that, and I still don't understand what we are moving away from when we say representative meter costs. So I'll pass.
Okay. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide shows the refinement to split the G2 monthly service charge into the 3 groups. And you can see on the chart the green line that goes all the way across, showing that each of the customers in the G2 customer class currently have the same monthly service charge. And then under the proposal, we're really recognizing the diversity of this customer class with such a wide range of meter capacities, and recognizing that by our consultant did an analysis looking at the usage and the differences across these different groups, and determined that these 3 groups would be the most appropriate way of splitting this class into these 3 groups. So you can see the purple lines in the 3 groups, that the smallest customer group that has about 1,100 customers in it would have a monthly service charge of $29.24. And then you can see that it goes up, and the largest group of customers would actually have an increase. This refinement better reflects the customer-related fixed costs in the fixed monthly service charge. Next slide, please.
Could you, I believe it's the case that the typical residential line is about the same as CFH as a small G2, is that correct?
Yes, thanks for pointing that out. So for the third refinement, this changes how the average and excess calculation is calculated. The average and excess calculation is a way of looking at how much capital investment would be needed for the system if all customers used at an average level all year round. And then excess would be, you need more capital investment if customers use a peak amount. So this is a measure of that. And on the slide, you see the words energy and demand. For the average, we're using the word energy, and then for the excess or the peak, we're using the word demand. So the way that this calculation has been updated is in the previous study, the average and excess calculation focused on just demand, and that is appropriate if you have a system where gas use is growing and the system is growing. In this case, our demand is declining, and we also use both energy and demand when we design the replacement pipes for the system. So because demand and energy are both important, the average and excess method uses those in its calculation, and that method is used to split the utilities asset costs, which then is used to split the utilities expenses across the customer classes. And this method leads to more costs being assigned to the residential customers because of their high peak usage. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I guess I'm the only one. This notion of A&E was presented by EES months ago. I'm not clear what's changing. We used it before, we're using it still. What's the change?
Commissioner, if I might ask to let Lisa move through her slides, see if she's addressing these questions as we move to the end, and if not, we can circle back for clarification.
So the fourth refinement uses the base and excess method to calculate the Tier 1 and Tier 2 rates for the residential customers. You can see on the chart that using this method, we are proposing a 15-cent increase on the Tier 1 and a 23-cent on the Tier 2 rate. The way that the base and excess method is applied is well, let me start with the blue part on the bottom. So the base and excess method, when the cost of service study comes up with an amount of demand and an amount of energy charges for the residential customer class, those energy charges need to be recovered across all of the therms equally. And so on the chart, you can see that in the light blue bars at the bottom. The demand portion is recovered, the demand portion is recovered partially across all of the units and partially across just the tier 2 units, because it's using that excess, a different method for figuring out the excess based on just one peak month, the winter peak January month, to figure out how much is considered excess and how much is base. And so that is how the demand is split. Next slide, please. There's an administrative recommendation in the report, and that is for the gas utility passes through the cap and trade compliance charges as well as the transportation charges. And both of those charges have a range currently. However, in closely looking at this, the range does not serve a purpose, because the charge is basically, Palo Alto has no control over those charges, and they're also non-discretionary charges. The city must participate in the cap and trade compliance program. It's mandated, and also Palo Alto must transport the gas to the city of Palo Alto's distribution system. So this recommendation has no impact on the rates. It's just a removal of the range. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the bill impact of just this cost of service study. I want to acknowledge that the city did also do a rate increase in July of 5% overall. And we are also in the next item tonight talking about a 2027 rate increase. But here we're trying to just isolate and show so you can be aware of the change of just this rebalancing report, which is, if I can draw your attention on the left to the median residential customer, it's an 8% impact of just the rebalancing in this report. There's no revenue requirement increase in the report, no revenue increase. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start to talk about, I'm going to run through each of the council's approved principles, design principles, and talk about how the study relates to those, and also provide some information that those principles request. Next slide, please. Design principle 1 is that the rates must be based on the reasonable cost to serve customers, and that is the overriding principle for the gas cost of service study. And that is exactly what this study does. It uses actual costs. We updated all of the different parameters and looks at an industry-accepted method to assign fixed and variable costs. The second design principle is that the cost of service study should involve a review of all existing rate schedules, and the study did that. We went through every single rate schedule. A couple notes on that. Our consultant did look at separating out the multifamily customers from the residential class into a separate class, and looked at separating out the master metered multifamily customers from the G2 commercial and master metered residential customer class, and did not find a basis for splitting those groups. So there's no recommendation to split out multifamily at this time. The other thing is that we looked at a rate schedule that we have that's called G10, and that rate schedule serves one customer, a compressed natural gas refueling station at the Municipal Services Center. That station is run by the Public Works Department and is used for refueling of city vehicles. So what we've determined is most appropriate in this case is that we do need to charge a cost-based rate, but that it will be more efficient to do that through a inter-fund transfer where we don't have a rate schedule and just charge the department as we do with other inter-fund transfers across the city. Next slide, please. The third principle gets into the low-income bill impacts and should look at the impact of any proposed changes on low-income customers. and make sure that they're evaluate those in alignment with state law. The chart on the right shows the low-income customers that we're able to identify because they participate in our low-income rate assistance or low-income home energy assistance program. And what that chart shows is the bill impact of the cost of service study only on those customers. And you can see that the majority of the customers have a rate impact that's under $5 a month. There's about 400 customers that participate in those programs, and they use an average of approximately 30 therms per month. And importantly, I wanted to note that if the city should want to mitigate this impact across those 400 customers, the total cost of that would be approximately $30,000 per year. Next slide, please. Design principle 4 is to determine the proper allocation of fixed and variable costs and how those can be implemented in various rate designs. And I'm not going to go in detail through the bullets here because I've touched on these all already, but all the things that we talked about in the cost of service study are about proper allocation of fixed and variable costs, and we've addressed this design principle in that way. Next slide, please. Design principle 5 is to review the non-rate revenue sources that may be available for rate discounts or rebates. And there's two listed on the slide on the left. One is that in 2025, we checked our interest income, and the interest income that's available and not being used for other purposes is about $0.4 million. I guess I should say that it is being used for a purpose, and that is to pay for our costs. So if we don't use it for something else, then it will lower the rate increases, all else being equal. The second source of funding is the $15 million that's currently available approximately in the gas utilities cap and trade reserve. And the uses that are allowed for those funds are on the right side of the slide in the yellow box. There's requirements from CARB as well as requirements from the City of Palo Alto. And the City of Palo Alto's policy expresses a preference for the use of those funds for greenhouse gas reduction activities over rebates. But one of the allowed uses is rebates to natural gas retail ratepayers. Next slide, please. So with that, our recommendation is that the UAC recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution approving the 2026 natural gas cost of service report and amending the rate schedules, and then also repealing the rate schedule for that one customer, the G10 natural gas, compressed natural gas customer. With that, I would be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we do that, I'd like to turn the floor over to the UAC subcommittee for additional comments on this presentation, and then I would like to open the floor for public comment.
I can start. First, I really want to thank staff and the consultant for all their engagement on this issue. We, as a subcommittee, had several meetings over the months where many of us stayed over time than what was scheduled. Staff was incredibly generous of their time. I stayed even longer sometimes, just poring over spreadsheets together with staff, and I'm just very thankful and grateful for the generosity of your time in doing that and answering every question that I had, and it gave a lot of confidence in this process. Overall, I think we came to a good result, given everything that we had before us. First of all, I think the staff report and the consultant's report here really satisfies our seeking of transparency. This is a much better and clearer report than the last one we had before us. The staff report in particular provides a much clearer look at what were the drivers for the cost increases. And you can go through this report and really understand how certain changes affected the rates for each class. And I think we have achieved a reasonable cost allocation. One important note, I think, that's really important as a context for our discussion on this item, is that when you control for the underlying data and the numbers that feed into the mechanisms of the COSA, with these updated mechanics, we actually have a result that is more affordable for our residential customers than if we had retained the mechanics of the prior COSA and just updated the numbers. And you can see that result on the top of package page 52. There's a sentence there that describes that. Third, I think it's great that we're no longer proposing to use greenhouse funds, green funds to subsidize gas service. I think that's another great result that came out of this COSA process. My one point for the future, or question for the future, is a future debate on what reducing the meter charges for G2 means for our city's decarbonization and electrification goals. While you saw that council has reinstated several of the design principles, they did not or were unable to reinstate what was a longstanding design principle that within the context of Proposition 26, that we should consider rate designs that support our policy preference towards electrification and greenhouse gas reduction. I think that's something that we should have a future conversation about as we move forward with discussions about gas decommissioning. So again, I want to thank staff, the consultant, and my fellow commissioners who were involved, and I support this gas COSA being forwarded onwards. Thank you.
Is that a comprehensive report out from the committee, or is that only your report out, just out of curiosity?
I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Scharf, or Chair Scharf, was the third member? Okay, great. Thank you very much. It was very helpful. We'll now open the floor for public comment.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 4, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. We have no hands raised online, but we do have an in-person comment by Hamilton Hitchings.
Thank you to the UAC Gas COSA Subcommittee and to staff for your hard work and collaboration. The 2025 Gas COSA made discretionary accounting changes that significantly lowered costs for small business, raised costs for Tier 1 residents by 1/3, and financially discouraged electrification. The 2026 COSA improves upon this by better explaining these changes, distributing the costs more fairly between rate classes, and supporting a residential tiered structure that encourages electrification, as was done in previous years. Staff should also show the fiscal year's total increase, not just the incremental change, since we've already had a 5% increase this year. The overall rate increase for gas utility payers remains 5% for fiscal year 2025 and 26. Residential median monthly bills will now increase 13% for this fiscal year, down from the original 22%. Small G2 commercial customers will see their median bills drop about 53%. The monthly fixed fee per G2 customer drops from $170 per month to $29 per month, based on updated data and new accounting methodology choices. Unfortunately, this strongly disencourages electrification or disincentivizes it. The city's rate-setting standard is reasonable cost, and I'd argue that a fee higher than $29 is still reasonable. Since full electrification is one of Palo Alto's top climate goals, the steep reduction directly undermines that objective. This single change could offset much of the progress made by the utility's other electrification programs. This would be worse if staff proposed a rebate for small businesses, and I encourage the commission to ask staff if they have any plans to do so. During this COSA review process, we were not able to get comparisons between prior and new costs and answers about how much each of the changes increase each class of customers' rates. For example, how much G1 rate increase as a result of updated meter calculations. Staff and city's legal team have been adamant about the lack of transparency to prevent liability. This should be challenged for future COSAs to try and create a more open and transparent process. Once again, thank you for the substantial step in the right direction with the new 2026 gas COSA.
Okay, we will now return to the UAC and open the floor for commissioner questions and comments. Commissioner Tucker, I know you had an outstanding question. Would you like to start? Yeah.
Oh, no, open it up, let's see where it goes.
Commissioner Metz?
Yeah, I had one question. Perhaps you can help me understand. This is packet page 55, table 5, if we could bring that up. It's not in the presentation.
And you said page 55?
Packet page 55.
Okay.
Yes.
Would it accelerate things if I were to just provide that packet and, no? Okay. Are there any other questions while we're waiting for that to get pulled up?
I have a quick gap filler. Lisa, are you preoccupied or with this? Oh, then you do that. Then I'll ask my question to Utsav, please. Could you explain how on page 52, I think it was, you made the point that this new COSA improves things for residential, and it was all on packet page 52. Can you elaborate?
Sure, I can read out it's a sentence at the beginning of package page 52.
It's not on table 2? It's not on the chart?
No, it's,
No, this is the first full sentence of package page 52.
yeah.
Okay.
It reads, the UAC's gas COSA, skip to actually the next sentence.
I see where you are.
Okay. Under this approach, retaining prior study methods and only updating costs and revenues to current levels, the median residential monthly bill would be approximately $80.88, which is $1.55 or 2% higher than the median bill under the 2026 report method shown in Table 1.
Okay, let's turn to Commissioner Metz's question on packet page 55, table 5.
So the question I have is either for the subcommittee or for staff. The question I have either for staff or the subcommittee is since this is all supposed to be cost-based, it looks like the marginal cost for delivering G2 or G3 gas is about half the marginal cost for G1. In other words, G2 is $1.22, G3 $1.18, whereas Tier 2 for G1 is $2.52. And I don't understand why the residential rate should be double the commercial, how that works out in a cost analysis. Seems like the cost to distribute a thermic gas is the cost to distribute a thermic gas.
But this reflects the combination of both the base and the energy and the demand charge, is that correct?
Yes, it is. I think this would be a great opportunity for Amber Gishwin from EES to explain at a high level the response to this question. If Amber, are you
Yes,
available?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this question is why is the residential volumetric charge higher than for the other G2, G3 non-residential essentially classes? And this really boils down to the demand component for each of those customer classes. So when we did the study, we looked at usage profiles for each class, and the residential class has a much peakier load profile, and that is associated with a higher cost. So they have to pay a higher volumetric rate to recover that capacity that they're using on the system because their volume use is less overall compared to G2 and G3, which have much flatter load shapes.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. Can you point me to somewhere in the consultant report where it addresses that? Because I did look for that and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, we have, I think, let me see, there's a figure comparing the load profiles. Let me find what page it's on.
Actually, that was what I was looking for, and I
It's like
couldn't find that.
75% or something.
There's comparisons between the various commercial and comparison of the various residential, but I didn't see a comparison.
Oh, we didn't put them together? Okay.
At least I couldn't find it. It's possible you did, and I didn't see it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so figure 3.2, and it's on page 26 of the report. So it's not normalized, but I think it's still, you can see the G1 load shape is much higher during the winter months, even though usage during the summer months is about the same as the other classes. You can see that's much peakier usage.
Okay.
Could I ask a follow-up clarification on that? We've heard since the beginning of this COSA discussion for months, this notion of peakiness and the load factor of residential is lower. But is it the case that, I mean, there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of residential gas customers, and yes, they're all peaky, funny word, but don't they peak at different times? I mean, the fact that, or is this an average, is this a composite number that, I mean, do we have any way of really penalizing the residential because they are peaky if we actually, when you spread them all out across a neighborhood, across a city, they're actually not peaking that much because I peak different times than you do. Please don't quote that in the minutes.
So I think I can help with this question as well. There's a figure right before this one, figure 3.1 on page 25, and this is comparing gas usage profiles for customers with different usage levels. So you can kind of presume that these customers maybe have different size homes, different end use for natural gas in those homes. And you can really tell in this that they have actually pretty similar load shapes. Now, when you guys have your AMI data, next time, hopefully we do a study, maybe in a year or two, we'll actually be able to pull Palo Alto data and take a look at that, exactly what you're saying. But for now, this is the information we have. It's the best approximation for load shapes for the residential class.
So to ask again, is it your opinion that residential, that it really isn't, what do you say to the objection that residential, although they have a lower load profile in the mid-70s, there are so many of them and they all have, they may have the same ups and downs, but they're spread over different times of day. Doesn't that take away the delta or lessen the difference between residential and commercial? I'm hung up on the fact that residential should not be penalized at the 75% load factor.
It could, since we don't have individual meter data to look at, but I think the other part of this is determining whether we group the class together and take advantage of that load diversity if it exists versus looking at individual customer loads. I think that sort of planning criteria when you're looking at replacements on your system, the engineers from our conversations, it sounded like they were really looking at individual customer demands. So to me, that says they're not really looking at load diversity as much. And so when we're doing the cost allocation, it would be then appropriate to look at more of the individual customer profile rather than a diversified one.
I don't know that much about, I don't know the specifics for gas, but in electric power, residential is much peakier than commercial because people tend to come home at the same time. They turn on the lights, they turn on the TV. I would not be surprised if in gas you had the same situation where people come home, they turn the thermostat up, they cook dinner on the gas oven. So it's not that, wouldn't surprise me.
Got it.
I would just make the observation that, and it's a little hard, squinting at table 3.5, which is page 95, and looking at the load factors by month, they don't seem that dramatically different. I can see that the residential ones are lower, but not amazingly lower. And so it sort of suggests that the math for coming up with the rates must put a very high weight on the peak as opposed to the volume, right? That's what it would have to, because the load factors are not that dramatically different. So,
Right. I just want to add that in gas, it is really different than electric. Right now, we don't have that time of day information to look at, when a customer comes home and turns the gas on, that type of thing. So we're really looking at monthly level information and making inferences about when the gas is being used during that month through looking at data sources and the best information that we can. And it is primarily driven by weather. The peak is primarily driven by weather.
Yeah, I mean, that shows up in the monthly data. You can see that from the monthly data. And I would guess it doesn't vary that much, but it's surprising to me that the math boils out to double the marginal rate for residential as commercial. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I'd like to look at it a bit more, but I don't really understand it.
May I?
Please.
My position on the motion is going to be no and contrary unless I can better understand. I'm most troubled by the idea that we've come up with a new cost allocation that is going to cut the small G2 in their meter charge by 80-something%. In my view, fellow commissioners, it's a non-starter. There's just, for so many reasons, it's been mentioned from public comment that, this disincentivizes any small business wanting a heat pump from his landlord. I realize that's not a design principle. We've talked about that problem. Nonetheless, how does a business go to customers, go to the market and say, we used a cost allocation method for the last 5 years that is 500% greater on this one particular line item than what we're proposing now. We're basically at, you heard the numbers already, you see them, $160 down to $29. I have watched us try to answer questions on A&E and on COSA methodologies multiple times, like to the Finance Committee in April, and I simply can't get it through my head reading these presentations, listening to what we heard tonight, how it would not be possible for EES and for staff to solve this problem and come up with a more market reasonable number for the small G2 meter charge. I mean, I know just enough about COSA and cost accounting to say this is enough art as opposed to science that this problem couldn't be solved. And so my question therefore is, can we try again to explain through these 4 refinements, what is it that we're doing and learning that says this classic customer has to go from 160 to 29? If you had to make that number no less than 90, could you do it?
Commissioner Drucker, is that question directed at staff or is that directed at the subcommittee?
Yes.
Okay, would the subcommittee like to start with that?
Maybe it's directed to EES, I don't know. I like to go through staff and.
I'd like to give this, if it's okay, let's let the subcommittee answer first because I think they're your peers. And then if there are subsequent questions, we'll direct those to staff.
Not that you have any peers. I think of you as fearless. The ability to, let's say, allocate these costs is a highly constrained problem, particularly now that we have real meter costs, which were not available in the 2020 COSA, which was using, as they mentioned, representative meter costs.
We didn't know the cost of meters in 2020, what it cost to buy and install a meter?
We didn't know the individual, I'll let staff answer that.
I didn't work on that study. I'm just looking at what they did in the study, and they used a representative meter.
We've established that I can't get representative meter through my head, so I don't know what that means.
Let's try to address your question about a representative meter. Could we let Amber talk about a representative meter?
Well, here's a good one. Can anyone on the UAC, am I the only one who doesn't understand this jargon?
Let's let the consultant address the question, I think.
Okay, if I may, the representative meter really is just looking at usage in the class or the most common meter style capacity in that class and picking that meter as a representative for the entire class. So for example, in the residential class, the representative meter was called a CL250, which is a house meter. That was the most common meter style for G1.
Thank you.
It ignores, yeah, does that help? Or
Well, I think maybe the light went on. We just looked around and said, what do most of our residential customers have for a meter? And it's that XYZ, and what does it cost to purchase and install that meter? And on that basis, we've built an entire methodology of how to assign these monthly fixed meter charges. I do now understand, I think, what a representative meter is, and I don't understand how it has somehow forced us into a position of dropping the price from 159 to 29.
Well, I believe that we have moved away from a representative meter towards actual meter costs. And in doing so, the costs to residential customers are greater than those to commercial customers.
Okay, then maybe for my colleagues on the subcommittee, how does the cost of a meter somehow lead to a model that tells me how to allocate the cost between classes, G1, G2, and then within a G2 class, big, small?
Is this addressed to, who's this question addressed to?
Utsoff and Bob.
Sure, I can take a crack. I can take a crack at it, and staff can correct me where I go wrong, because it is a complicated thing. So you'll see in Table 2, there's a meter weighting, and that's Table 2 of the staff report. To be clear, it does adjust the overall allocation of the value of the plant that is in the ground. So there's a value ascribed to all of the infrastructure we have. And part of that infrastructure includes the meters. It only directly allocates this equipment meter line in the rate base. So that's about $12.3 million. And I'm forgetting which table that is. It's either 3-1 or 3-2 in the consultant's report. But most of the physical plant to the ground, the services, the mains, the regulators, et cetera, is allocated with that average and excess method, not by meter weighting. So the meter weighting touches a small share of the plant value. It's about 8% of the $155 million plant value. And then its effect by changing the allocation flows through to totals like rate base and net plant. So if you look at table, 3-1, that shows you which asset uses which allocator. That's in the consultant's report. And then table 3.2 for the O&M allocators. And then 3.6 shows the meter weighting method. So if you look at, let me go to 3.1 here, or 3.2. So if you look at 3.2, actually, let me start with,
Maybe start with 3.6.
yeah, 3.6, yeah. Yeah, so in 3.6, you have the meter costs there, and that adjusts the weighting, and you can see the resulting allocator. And if you want to know how this is different than in the 2019 values, that's table 2 of the staff report. So you can see that change. And that.
I just don't know how, when a small business comes to us and comes to the utility and says, thank you so much for cutting my price by 85% on this one line item, but wait a minute, you've been overcharging me 500% for the last 5 years, how we then enter into an explanation. It has to do with the cost of your meter to buy it, to put it in the ground. We use that as a proxy for how to split up all the cost of our gas system. I'd be unpersuaded. And I don't think we're very.
The answer truly is we have the better data.
We have the better data?
We have the total replacement cost for each and every meter in the system. So that data now exists.
But even if we have the cost of a replacement meter, that's not going to persuade me that that is a good representative, a proxy, for my share of the burden of the system cost. It's like, okay, so now you know exactly what it costs to replace my meter. That doesn't persuade me that I should have this price or that price, you know, this percentage or that percentage of.
Sure. So
these costs.
I did a lot of research on this question myself, and I'll say that replacement meter costs is a very commonly adopted method for allocating these costs, and it's considered an improvement over prior methods like just using customer head count, because it is a weighted, it's a weighted measure.
Okay. Well, I should have said at the start, thank you to staff for preparing this work. It is a big accomplishment that we even have a chance to re-review the COSA. And so that's good. And for the poring over spreadsheets, and Utsaf, you don't even get paid for this, so thank you to the subcommittee. I'd like to ask a related question on the.
I would love to get to your related question, but I want to make sure that there's time for other commissioners to ask their questions. Are there any other questions from other commissioners?
I mean, I'll just point out, I agree that it's awkward to have a customer class have their price reduced so much based on a cost assessment. I don't have a problem. I'm so glad you went through this detailed process. I do believe the staff report is more clear than it was before. It's complicated still. It didn't change that much in terms of the breakdown of the distribution cost by customer class. It seems fair to me that we break it into 3 groups because they are not all, the same. That distribution chart you had with the, capacity of these meters within the G2 class, it just, I do think it's awkward now that you see these smaller customers that may have the perception that they got overcharged all these years. But that said, I don't have any complaint with the methodology. It seems more correct. So I just wanted to state that, and otherwise don't have any problems with the report.
Okay. I want to clarify that I too have no objections to the methodology. What I said before, though, is art versus science. There's enough flexibility to come up with a more pragmatic pricing conclusion than this $29. Because it's not only awkward, I don't even know if it's potentially, puts us at risk to cut price this much.
Is that a question? Because I actually think that.
It's a comment.
Okay. My own sense of that is that when you have better data, your liability, your responsibility is to conduct accurate cost of service studies on a regular basis. We last conducted a cost of service study 5 years ago. We updated it. We then re-updated it 1 year later. And we are reflecting in our current cost of service analysis the most recent data available at our disposal. I do not think that we are putting ourselves at legal risk by reducing people's rates.
I would also say.
I'm sorry, I have to, we're reducing people's rates and raising, that cost is not disappearing, it's going on to someone else. So, yeah.
No, absolutely.
We're significantly raising other rates on the same line item.
We are reallocating rates based on the best available data in the cost of service study.
And I would say, I disagree with you. I mean, I think that having gone through this process, maybe not spending as much time on spreadsheets as Commissioner Gupta, but an awful lot of time on spreadsheets, and working hard to find a way to mitigate the 22% to 23% increase we had for residential one customers. I think it would be, using the data that we have, almost impossible to find a way to mitigate that without having, and particularly without having other equally onerous issues somewhere else. I think it would probably be impossible to mitigate it to any great extent. And I know it would be impossible to do it without something that someone else would say, well, my God, their rate's going up by 22% or this rate's going down by 80%. I mean, it's a constrained problem. And to the credit of the staff, consultant, we worked 30 different alternatives in this one. I mean, this was not magically, let's just look at one and see what happens.
Alternatives to meter cost? Could you just mention a couple of them?
I'm not sure if I should.
Oh, okay.
I want to help kind of steer us a little bit more toward, I think, the appropriate role for the UAC here. We are deeply grateful for the very detailed support that the subcommittee provided. We truly amazing. And I'll reiterate that the staff have also spent a lot of time, and the consultant has spent a lot of time. I think our role as a UAC is to ensure that what was performed is aligned with, as Lisa pointed out, the objectives that we went into this with, the design guidelines. And I think that if the commission ascertains that the guidelines we approved were complied with, it is in fact not appropriate for us to question the technical standards by which staff executes on their work. Our role is not one of technical oversight, it's one of policy oversight.
I don't think it's a technical question to ask. When we're asked how we justify this hugely significant or big price swing, we're going to give them an answer. And to ask what other approaches did we consider is not a technical question. But if we don't want to delve into it, I do defer to the work done by colleagues. That's what we had a subcommittee for. Is it the role of the UAC, though, to ask, what did we pay the consulting firm, EES, overall, and also to have gone back for this revision, these refinements? What is the cost to the consultant? Is that a question of relevance?
Absolutely.
So far, we've spent about $120,000 on EES for this particular effort of coming up with this study, total.
And how much roughly might have the refinements have cost? Had we not?
It's for both. Okay. This is for both the 2025 study and the 2026 study altogether.
In other words, everything we've been hearing from EES on the topic of gas COSA for the past
Correct.
year. Had we not gone back after the remand, I mean, what did the remand cost us roughly?
I will need to look that up. just give me a moment and I can tell you that number.
Okay, and to go back to the slides that were presented, the 4 refinements, these are refinements over what? It's over what we put to the Finance Committee in April, right? Because I cannot read from the 4 slides what we have refined. I see what the topic is, I see that we, but I cannot see we refined from this to that, and I can't see what we refined on top of what the base was.
I'm not completely sure I understand your question.
There were 4 slides called refinements, 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 slides, refinement slides, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I am asking, we're refining compared to what? We're refining on top of the April COSA, right? What does refinement mean, I guess is what I'm asking.
The refinement is another word for, we could have said changes or key changes. So I think that's really what we're trying to compare to. Our focus here has really been on comparing to the current rates. We're not really focusing on comparing to the study that we brought forward in April that the council said needed additional work and that we went back to the UAC. So that hasn't really been our focus. It's really, in the examples that I gave and the information that we're giving, it's comparing it to what's in place based on the 2020 study.
Okay, so these are refinements compared to 5 years ago, not compared to what we last looked at. Thank you. I need to point out that the staff report on this topic over and over in the executive summary in the background pages, there were so many references to upgrading, changes, refining, that probably wasn't used, but never was it clear to the reader compared to what. And when you're when you're in the position of of the commissioner reading the report, when you're in my shoes, you're like, okay, well, this is presumably going to explain what we're doing different now than when we did it last time in roughly April, and it was sent back. So I wish the staff report had come right out with the headline, we're looking at the gas COSA again because the last time we did this, it was sent back to us. And so what we're doing differently this time compared to X, I think X means April, but I guess X now means 2020. That would have made for a much more readable report.
Okay, but I think it was April using the 2020 methodology, just to be clear. This is relevant to current rates.
No, in April, we were talking about creating G1, G2, G3. Sorry, G2 in 3 different categories. I mean, big, small, medium. In April, we were talking about A and E. All these concepts that we're talking about now were in the presentation in April. And I heard a comment earlier from another commissioner that I'm not altogether clear we made big changes here. It might be useful to, well, I mean, when I say big changes, I mean compared to April. I'm not in a position right now, having lost the forest for the trees, to tell you, how is this really that much different, better than what we sent to council last time? Witzaf or Bob, are you willing to just quickly summarize the most, 2 or 3 most important changes in this approach?
I think Commissioner Phillips fairly covered that when he said that that this COSA really mitigates a lot of the headwinds we saw from the prior analysis and the updated information on increases to residents. And so we took a really careful look and found a design based on reasonable cost allocation principles, a really detailed look at all the numbers that has mitigated those cost increases. If you'll remember, the prior COSA, I think, had a 49% increase for Tier 1 residential. It was using green funds meant for greenhouse gas reduction to subsidize rates to reduce impacts. This COSA vastly improves on all of those things while complying with reasonable costs.
And I think, to be clear, the goal of this COSA was not to achieve specific reductions across specific rate classes, but rather to accurately reflect the costs across those rate classes, given improved information that we have and combined with more modern methodologies for conducting COSAs.
That's exactly correct.
And I also think what would be most relevant to the council would be, how is it different from April, from the 2020 one, not,
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I am going to call this agenda item and ask that we move to adopt a resolution approving the 2026 natural gas cost of service analysis report, amending rate schedules G1, G2, G3, and repealing G10. May I get a motion for that?
So moved.
May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can we please call the roll? Or is there any discussion, any further discussion necessary?
I just want to make
Yes,
one
please.
quick comment, which this is a very important and intricate problem. And I think the use of the subcommittee in addressing this problem, rather than having it just sort of show up here one night, was really good. Really appreciate their work, the work of staff, the work of the consultant, too. But I think we should use the methodology more.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think this is a wonderful time to give a second kind of round of congratulations and thanks to the subcommittee for their tremendously hard work. I think it is also, since I am on my soapbox, cost of service analyses are deeply important, not just for the gas utility, but also for our other utilities. And I think that what staff has seen through this process is that there's an appetite to dig into that cost of service methodology at the subcommittee level, so that we have confidence that the methodologies, which are inherently tied up with decisions, policy decisions about how we decide to allocate costs, are appropriately represented in our final cost of service analyses. So I would just encourage us to continue and build on the approach that we've used for this gas COSA in our future rate designs. Okay, now we can call the roll.
On that point, I'd like to ask, is the main virtue or one of the virtues of the subcommittee approach that it's not public?
I don't think it is a matter of public or not public. I think that it is, in fact, because everything that it gets voted on is explicitly public. I think that the virtue is that there's an opportunity to have a back and forth with staff and a consultant in a much more, in a less time-constrained manner that allows for deep understanding by people who have the time and energy to take that dive without it taking 30 hours of, yes, of everybody else's time. Nicely said. Okay, could you please call the roll? Or the vote on this motion?
Commissioner Metz?
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker?
With all respect to the work by Utsoff and Bob, no.
Commissioner Croft?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Gupta?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
Okay.
Oh, Vice Chair, I was wondering if we might take a very short bio break.
I'm sorry.
before the next item.
It is after 8. I think I am obligated to do that. Let's break until 8:30 and we'll return. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to kick off the next item on our agenda, the discussion and update on fiscal year 2027 preliminary utilities financial forecast and rate projections, by saying that I made a novice error in this space, not more strictly following the original schedule in the agenda. I was given an agenda that did not have the times, and therefore I failed to keep us on task. The next agenda item is scheduled for an hour and a half, and yet we are not going to spend that amount of time on this agenda item. Instead, we're going to recognize that these are preliminary rate changes. They are the first pass at rate changes for FY27. We have two, if I'm not mistaken, additional, is it just one or two additional passes at these rates over the next one additional pass at these rates over the next year. And it will come back to us. So I just want to keep that at the forefront of this discussion, and I'm going to do my best to encourage staff to present this quickly, and for us to delve in kind of where we have substantive questions about changes vis-a-vis this year's maybe methodological approaches.
Thank you, Chair Motter. So I'm going to just introduce basically the same team again. I'm going to add Adriana Artola. She is our senior resource planner on our water utility side, so she'll be joining the team. I just wanted to point out again, we're going to keep this at a very high level. Our projections are very close, or nearly identical to last year. We have some positive news on the electric side in terms of our reservoirs are full. We're expecting a normal year. So I'm just going to kick it over to staff, and we'll be as efficient as possible.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll try to be responsive to that request and try to go through the information very quickly. In fact, as Alan mentioned, it is very similar, our forecast, compared with what we brought to the UAC, brought to the council back in June. And so just to point that out on this slide, this shows our median bill projections, and the rate trajectories are the same actually for all of the utilities. With a couple of exceptions. We've added the year 2031, and that is preliminary because we're going to be working with the budget team to develop what our budgets are for 2031, and that's very preliminary. And also for the gas utility, that's an exception where we do have a 9% increase in 2027 instead of a 6%, which is what we brought to the council in June. So these rates support a variety of community goals, including investments in grid reliability and modernization. They will allow us to meet the council's sustainability and climate action goals, and also support maintaining and replacing infrastructure in the water distribution system and the wastewater collection system, and pay towards rebuilding the wastewater treatment plant. So the preliminary forecast, as you can see in this slide, if you look in the red box, is the 9% overall impact on the median residential bill, which is about $37.80 increase on the monthly average residential bill of $442 in 2026. So that's the overview of what we're proposing. And what I'd like to do in order to, basically we've presented a very dense set of information in all these slides. We want to provide that information both for the public and for the UAC members to digest all of that information. And we know you've had a chance to look over that information already. So what we're going to do is go through just the overview slide for each of the utilities and highlight some of the changes since last year and what's included in this preliminary proposal. I also wanted to mention the main thing that's changed since June is that we know the year-end fiscal year 2025 reserve balances. So you've seen those in the slides that show the changes in the reserve balances, and we're happy to try to answer any questions on that. There's a series of charts that are the same for each of the utilities that show the percentage change, drivers, and the reserve balances for the CIP reserve and the operations reserve. So next slide, please. So for the electric utility, the proposal is for a 6% rate increase in fiscal year '27. There are some drivers for this increase, including there's a net supply cost is 3% higher than it was in last year's financial forecast, and we're still continuing to issue debt, planning to issue debt for grid modernization in the second half of fiscal year '26. And we also have other capital spending and distribution system maintenance spending that's rising, and we need to continue to replenish our reserves. So those drivers are really quite similar to what we had when we came to the council in June, and the rate increase is the same. Next slide, please. For the gas utility, what's going on is that the amount of costs that we need to recover stayed the same. However, the revenue projection declined. So based on the decline in the sales, we also did a statistically adjusted end-use model with a consultant and made a revision to our forecast, a downward revision to the forecast. So that analysis resulted in a forecast that reduces by about 1.2% per year over the next 5 years. And that is what's driving the change in the rate forecast from the 6% to 9%. Additionally, this utility has a $16.5 million grant that's going to be used for main replacement, but we do have in 2027 a revenue-funded main replacement project coming up. Next
Lisa,
slide,
just
please.
to
Yes.
clarify here, because this excludes supply-related rate changes, the percentage basis as a function of the bill, like what's the balance of the distribution rate versus the amount that's passed through on climate and on gas commodity charge?
Great question. So what we do here is we kind of assume that the commodity, that the supply portion of the bill stays the same. Okay. And so we're looking at a 14.5% increase on the distribution rate, which is equivalent to the 9% overall bill increase. So we're always trying to bring it back to how will the customer's total bill be impacted, and that is what we're presenting. But I think part of your question also is what's going on with the supply budget forecast that we are passing through, and that has come down. So the outlook for that forecast is lower than it was in June, and we've incorporated that into our proposals.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so for water, as mentioned before, these rate projections are consistent with the fiscal 2026 financial plan with the 10% rate increase in 2027, and then those 10% rate increases through 2030 with the 2031 update of 9%. I would say the update or, the change from last year is that the operations reserve balance at fiscal 2025 year end was higher than expected due to capital spending being lower than budgeted. And so we are projecting to maintain both the CIP and the operating reserves within the guideline range, which is an improvement from last year's forecast. I'll also say that, the driver of these rate increases are capital projects, namely one-time capital projects, but the 5-year CIP budget for fiscal year 2027 is not finalized yet, and it does include some conservative assumptions. And I would say that it represents kind of the upper limit of potential capital spending. And so, as we gain more information, particularly on, like I said, the large one-time capital projects, such as the seismic improvement to 2 of our tanks, we could revise projections from there.
What do these assume about the future of water consumption in the city? Is it holding steady, going down, or going up over this period?
Our financial projection includes somewhat conservative, I would say conservative, but it includes the assumption of the long-term decline in water demand. And so that's what we're carrying forward over the trajectory.
So some of these, the fact that these are pretty large on the distribution rate, presumably it's investment, but it's also a shrinking denominator?
Exactly, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. And for the wastewater utility, the increase is the same as what we had mentioned to the council in June. And one wonderful thing I have to report is that Palo Alto has received some grant revenue, and the treatment plant has been instrumental in getting that grant revenue from Valley Water. And this, although there have been increases in the wastewater treatment plant costs, those have been largely offset by these grant funds. And so this is really beneficial for the residents and businesses of Palo Alto. And we're going to continue to receive that grant funding to offset these specific project costs for the treatment plant. So I'm really glad to be able to share that news with you. And we do still need to, however, replenish the reserves, both the CIP reserve and operations reserve. Those remain low, and we need to restore the reserves to within the guideline ranges. Additionally, as you know, this utility took a loan from the fiber utility of $3 million. The cash remains low at the end of fiscal year 2025, a little bit below our forecasts, and we do need to repay that loan with before the end of fiscal year 2026. So the information here is that we may not be able to repay all of that loan before the end of the year, and we need to look at ways to extend the loan or take a different loan that will allow us to keep a positive cash balance. So that is the very quick version of all of the utilities. And I do want to mention also that our rates are very competitive with our neighbors across the utilities. And you can see a slide of that in each of the utilities. So I just want to highlight that. Particularly, our electric rates are half as much as PG&E. And so with that, we would be happy to try to answer any questions that you have or areas that you'd like to delve into. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I would now like to ask for public comment.
If any member from the public would like to speak on item number 5, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. No hands raised.
Okay, we'll now open it for questions from commissioners.
I'll keep to just 2, and I might send more over email. First, I was wondering if it would be possible in reports like this. I know the city and our mayor and other council members have been really looking closely at the costs of consultants. And I know in the utilities context, it's a little different in that we have a lot of very technical consultants we hire. But it might be nice to have a table in here that shows the who, what, why, when, and cost of consultants that the utility is hiring, so that we can see that as a commission. So that's just my one comment. My second comment is, I looked at table 1 in the staff report, and if you, and I understand these are compounding figures, and that the percentages and the values here are being additive from the year prior. And if you were to calculate it, and I just did quick napkin math on this, we're seeing a 46% cumulative impact on electric, 46% cumulative impact, 50% cumulative impact on gas, 75% cumulative impact on water, 84% cumulative impact on wastewater, and then 12.6% on refuse and stormwater. And if you look at the total bill impact, we're looking at a projection of an overall increase of 53.6%, adding $237 per month to the median residential bill, which would be a bill of about $680 a month. We had a public commenter bring forth affordability concerns, and I do worry as we march forward with these rate increases, some of which are unavoidable. We're really constrained by their fixed costs. But I think we should be very aware of that we might be proceeding towards an affordability crisis in Palo Alto, just given the extent and cumulative impact of all these rate increases, far above the pace of inflation.
I would just like to ground that statement in reference to the stormwater, which I believe is inflation indexed, and therefore it is important to subtract that number from all of the other rate increases, because inflation does not just apply to stormwater. Other questions?
I'm going to echo those comments. I also did the math coming up with those numbers, and my first impression was, inflation is, on top of everybody's minds as the government tries to get a handle on inflation. And we've had these high numbers year to year on the rate increases, like the overall bill rate increases. But as you see it continuing into the foreseeable future, way beyond inflation, I think we need to take a relook at what are we doing to try to control this and try to get creative in bringing these numbers down. I do think it's an affordability crisis coming our way if we don't take a new look with creative ideas to try to cut costs to deliver the services we deliver. So there are some risks to the upside, risks like gas price we just passed through, the refuse is going through cost of service, that might increase. And then we've been hearing so much about the electricity market and expecting prices to go up there, price on the open market. We are looking to fill out our portfolio of power purchase agreements and not able to compete with the people who are beating us to the punch. And I wouldn't be surprised to see those prices go up. So I'm also concerned about the things we aren't seeing in the forecast that could pressure us going forward. So I encourage us, I would like to know, I guess, whether we have any ideas. Do we have an initiative in the utility CPAU to really dig into the driving factors? I did see the slides on kind of what is driving those costs. One question is around reserves. I know we have a lot of different reserve accounts. Is there any way to collapse the reserve accounts and combine the risks? I don't know enough about, do we really need every single reserve account we have? Also, I'm going to say something probably unpopular, but we have this big fiber reserve and we have a fiber pilot we're going forward with. I know the city council wants to do that, but there's some money sitting there that I would love to see that money, having seen the financial plan for the fiber utility and not being convinced that until I see the data. I mean, I need to see the data, but the business plan, there were a lot of challenges with that financial model. There's a pile of reserve funds that I don't know if they just need to go back to the community or if they could be reused elsewhere. I'm kind of embarrassed by how low some of our reserve funds are, so obviously we need to replenish those. And I'm just bringing up some ideas that pass through my mind. I have no idea legally whether they could be done, but I do urge the city to look at ways that we can change that trajectory of the prices, and if someone could answer me on, what kind of internal initiatives we have to try to address that. Thanks.
Chair, do you want us to take notes, or do you want to answer each of the commissioners as they come up with the questions?
No,
I think do either.
More directly would be helpful.
Yeah. So just hitting the kind of the highlights is actually we are doing an internal review of our reserve policies in terms of, are they adequate? Are they in areas that we can combine or compress based on the number of reserves that we have throughout all utilities. So that is an ongoing function as well. In terms of initiatives to save costs, are very mindful that, you know, a dollar to the utility is a dollar out of our customer's pocket. So that is in our forefront of our mind, and we're very cognizant and aware of that. You know, we want to provide efficient, reliable and safe services that are affordable and environmentally sound. So that goes to the heart of our mission and our course and our values as a utility and as a city. So we are going through that right now. We are always open to initiatives in terms of internally working within our department, but also working with the rest of the city departments, right? So there's things that we do now that maybe the public is not aware of by, you know, we provide services to our Public Works Department because we have, you know, equipment and the means and methods for streetlights. So that's more efficient for us to do that. And for our signalized intersections. And on a flip side, the Public Works Department, they have really strong functions in tree trimming, so they do our line clearing. So we look across functions within not only the utility, but within city departments. In the report, in the presentation, we highlighted some of the near-term activities. You can turn the page back. We actually tried to prune that because we were talking about some of the things we've done already. So we can certainly bring those back so they understand that we've had a process over the years. And the ones in the presentation now are just more recent, right? So it's a constant discussion within our department and throughout the city on how we can be more efficient and mindful of those costs. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there as well. So other ideas, you know, we certainly would solicit input and ideas from this commission, either now or in the future, and we can kind of address those and bring those forward as members of the public and members of the commission, and making sure that we're doing our best to meet those needs. I did want to mention one thing, though. The cost of living is and adjustments are different from what we're seeing. As we talked about some of the constraints that we have, we're seeing construction cost index throughout the state going up. We're seeing supply costs going up. There are some impacts to the tariffs. We're doing what we can to pre-purchase materials. We have staff not only working within the utility, but in our finance department and trying to get those best values. And we are coordinating with other utilities to see if, you know, we can, you know, pool our resources together to get better deals for Palo Alto.
I guess you know, I would be interested in what other cities are projecting. If we can look at anybody else's public packets where they're projecting out 5 years or 6 years to see if they have any different approaches. I also wonder if it's an opportunity for a subcommittee possibly just to get some new ideas floating around. But I feel that these numbers are unacceptably high in the long term. I'm not, you know, we can handle short-term blips, and I understand because of COVID, we underspent, we didn't raise rates, but that excuse goes away at some point, right? We can't just keep that excuse as why they're elevated, you know, perpetually into the future. So I would like to see an effort I would like to see those numbers be lower in the out years.
I think that the statement about reviewing reserve funds is a kind of perpetual thread that has come up several times, and I want to make sure that when that review happens, we have a chance to see and comment on kind of policies that are associated with reserve fund maintenance and reserve fund range appropriateness.
To be clear on the reserve study, as Alan was referencing, we actually have asked our outside auditor to look at this for us. So we have Baker Tilly, the city's independent auditor, looking at the utilities rates. This was an item that was highlighted by the UAC last year, as well as frankly the Finance Committee and Council as well. So that study is underway by Baker Tilly, and not just looking at utilities, looking at some of our other enterprise reserves as well. And we do expect that study to be done in time for the rate setting for FY 2020.
I would like it to be agendized. I mean, this has come up before, and I mean, it's always one reserve or another that's low and needs to be filled. There's also then money goes, oh, we were low here, so we took money from this reserve and put in that reserve. You know, how are we setting the levels of these reserves? Why are there so many of them? It seems highly irrational to me, you know, given that we could pool risks and potentially have lower reserves and not lose anything. And, you know, I could well be wrong about this, but it would be the first time, and I would really like to hear it from, you know, I'd really like to be part of that process, or for you to be informing the committee, because again, I can never keep track of, there's always this reserve, and every time the rates come across, they have to be a little higher because some reserve or other needs to be filled.
Yeah, we'll take that back as staff, and maybe we'll have Baker Tilly actually come to the UAC and start talking through that. And
Perfect.
Just, you know, part of it is the benchmarking and looking at other utilities. That is also part of that evaluation.
Great. The second one that, I'm sorry.
Could I build on that particular point? I think as part of that discussion, it's really important to differentiate between reserves that are meant for emergency activities and reserves that are meant for long-term projects that you know you are saving for. And I think that a really clear issue that we have here is that A, we don't differentiate between them, and B, there has been no policy discussion about whether you should be saving for future capital assets versus debt financing future capital assets. One pushes the cost of those future capital assets on today's ratepayers, and the other reflects the the cost of asset operation and ownership when that asset is being used. And I think that I mean, there are obviously risks around debt financing large capital infrastructure projects. You know, you can get runaway debt very quickly and end up with much larger rates long-term. But that is a policy decision that the utility is making that has not been fully daylighted, I think, and discussed and debated openly. And I think that it is useful to think about a balance of those two approaches.
Perfect. So I think agendizing a discussion, a very comprehensive discussion of reserve policy is something I personally would like to see. The second one that kind of rattles around in my head a little bit has to do with gas and water in particular, where we're expecting demand has been declining. We expect it to decline more. And I think I know, since I've talked about this in the gas context a lot, but you know, is there a way we can reduce our investment somehow proportional or our expenditure to reflect this? Because otherwise we get caught, you know, in these much higher double-digit rate increases that we see because, well, we have to invest the same amount, but the number of people, the amount of water usage is going down and the amount of gas usage is going down. I don't know the answer. I'm much better posing this as a question, but, you know, it's like, is there something here we could better match our expenses to this, or are we just doomed to, you know, what they call in econ, the death spiral in these, where the price keeps going up, so people use less, and it keeps going up and up and up and up. I'd prefer to think we don't want to get in that situation, but I think we have to be proactive if we're not going there.
Yeah, so points very well taken. We are performing and updating our urban water management plan for 2026. So we'll be looking at what those rate projections looks like in the future. And there's a financial model, and there's also a potential growth as the city, you know, has more housing units. We're anticipating, you know, more economic development. So we do need to plan that out for the long term, but I hear you 100% in terms of what that looks like. And you know, that's someone, we appreciate that feedback. That's very helpful for us in bringing that back to the UAC.
I just want to make one comment. I really appreciate the fact that Commissioner Croft's leadership on this is raising the issue before the Finance Commission asks the utilities folks and you to do the same things. This red alert that you started with, Commissioner Utzoff, is exactly right. With the escalating, in all areas, escalation, we get, of course, particularly at budget time, but we get probably more email about that and what it's costing me. And not just BMR folks, below market rate, but it's hitting even sort of, what you would call the workforce housing, because it's just going up, 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 up. And sort of a comprehensive look early as to the things that you're mentioning here. I just, salute you for all bringing it up in advance. It's worth the study time. So thanks.
Commissioner Metz?
Hi. Yeah, one thing I would like to suggest as a way to approach this, particularly with the new leadership in the utility, is what I would call a lean analysis of our expenses. In other words, starting with what are the activities that customers value, and then what activities does the utility need to conduct to deliver that value, and maybe what activities don't we need to conduct, and among the things that we decide we need to do, how do we do them most efficiently and effectively? I think, we're kind of at the point with drawing on the comments from all the other commissioners in being very concerned about, this large cumulative rate increase, that really fundamental look-see like that would be worthwhile at this point.
Understood. I think that's a good way to present it, and there's some values that the community expects in terms of making sure the water meets all the regulatory standards that they expect for potable water. So some of those values they might not know the details of, but maybe looking at some of those programs or other services that aren't core, but are also beneficial could be a part of that. And that's, I think, what you're telling and what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a detailed and kind of fundamental analysis of, what we need to do, what really adds value and what doesn't, and, how to do it better.
Yeah, and as part of that, we can and will, provide some of the mandates that we are receiving on the state level, and what that means, the non-functional turf, state requirements, what that means for our city, what that means for the community, and what that is doing to drive some of demands down. So that is, something that we can bring back and take into account as we look at sharpening our pencils and what that means.
Yeah, please. I had forgotten I had two comments. Just following on Commissioner Metz's idea of kind of following what the customers value. I had looked at the page of recently implemented cost containment, and a couple things popped to mind. So one of them was, okay, so there's credit card fees, right? We're not going to be paying those any longer once that gets implemented. But you also mentioned that some customers do not want an AMI meter. They opt out, and we saved a certain amount by not having to monitor them. Well, if they're refusing to have the AMI meter, we should charge them the fee for the person to go do the meter read, and whatever overhead there is to manage the fact that these people refuse to go along with the new technology. So if it's costing, if it's costing us more to serve them, along the lines of charging people what things cost, I mean, we should charge them for that. There's also the paperless billing that saved us money for people that don't want paperless billing. I know my mom wants copies of her checks, and she gets charged $3 every month to have copies of her checks come in her statement. So I do think I know our billing system is not the most agile thing in the world, which I do think probably is worth investing in so that we can do things like this, so that we can, implement programs like this, where we could say, okay, well, you want paper bill, you get charged a little extra. You want a manual read, you get charged a little extra. And maybe there are things that customers value that we're providing that we can pass through the cost, where we can recoup something. These are not gigantic things, so it's not going to solve our problem. But I think things like just thinking through potential things like that might be helpful.
Okay.
My only recommendation, I realize this is just discussion and there's no motion, no vote. But I'd urge the next time you present this, that I've made this point in other contexts, absolute numbers, prices, like these charts are always, the whole report is full of deltas, percentage changes, the dollar incremental difference, but give us the rate, please. We heard the number before. We've all kind of done our eyeball math. I came up with $650. $650 is the projected rate by my squinting. That'll be the average residential rate in 5 years. It's at 400 and something now. So those are the 9-10% rate increases, as far as the eye can see, that, we're not asked to approve them tonight, thankfully, but we, at a minimum, let's state the number. I'll echo what you've heard already, a more rigorous look at cost containment beyond, I've looked at old presentations and meeting videos and so forth. The answer always seems to be, we'll just defer a couple of CapEx items in the near term out of the 5-year window, so that'll help. Or we'll, further neglect our reserves. Those are always the standard answers, as opposed to taking a hardcore look at operating costs, and as well as CapEx, whether certain things actually need to be done, not punted, but canceled. And, the answer may to all these questions be, we simply can't cut anything. But to discuss even, let alone pass or vote on 9% annual price increases without really sweaty, difficult analysis of operating costs, personnel costs, head count, et cetera, is unresponsible, can't do it, irresponsible.
So we do have a finance committee for that purpose, correct?
Do we?
Established for the FY27 rates? Do we have a subcommittee for the UAC on FY27 rates?
I don't think we do. I think we had one that was previous.
Last year, okay.
Yeah.
So can I, what's the process for recommending the creation of a subcommittee? Can someone help me here?
I don't know that it needs to be a recommendation. The UAC is a standing practice that a subcommittee is established. So I think staff and the chair can work to establish your 2027 committee.
Great.
So creating a subcommittee, there's some guidelines that we can discuss on what that looks like, to keep it finite, keep it centralized, keep it dedicated to a within certain parameters, so it maintains that integrity.
But you're also looking beyond, like, the previous budget subcommittee did not look at these issues of like, okay, how do we dig in and really try to save operating costs? So if that's part of the remit, I don't know if it's a separate subcommittee or, just a special remit to this subcommittee that, look, we want you to dig in and find ways to maybe mitigate the cost.
If I could maybe interject, as we've heard a lot of things from the commissioners. I think it's going to be an overlap if you talk about, let's look at reserve policies and the capital. It all kind of levers you pull, you move and pull. So you might want to combine and compress and try to find some pathways here with a subcommittee, if that is the choice of the UAC, and keep it a very finite term and narrow scope. So it does not keep bleeding, and then we can bring things back to the greater team and not have it so wide ranging. So that's something that we can work with the chair and vice chair on, hearing what we've heard from the collective.
Great. Then we will take that offline and return next month with recommendations for a subcommittee with a specific charge.
One more fine point. On gas, in the chart where we talk about FY26, I got confused and I did read the footnote. We're doing 2 increases on gas in FY26, if I'm not mistaken. And to my earlier point about looking at deltas, it's not clear to me whether this relatively low increase, I think it's 5%, is that based on what? Are we missing, are we just eliding one of the gas price increases? So please make that crystal clear when we look at this next.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay. With that, we will move on to the close out of this meeting. We have, let's see, future topics for upcoming meetings. Are there any future topics for upcoming meetings? And this, of course, is the opportunity to discuss our 12-month rolling calendar. I know that Commissioner Tucker had some comments and questions that we can revisit, but we can also, Commissioner Metz, would you like to start?
Sure. I have 3 future topics I'd like to suggest. The first one is federal impact. I think we discussed this a couple of meetings ago, but in the discussion earlier in this meeting, we talked about one thing, our RPS requirement is ratcheting up to 60% by 2030. At the same time, the federal government is doing everything possible to kneecap renewable energy. So seems like that's a challenge. And I think it's really important to look at how the impact of what the federal government does and how we're going to achieve our renewable targets and address some of the cost issues we just discussed all at the same time. I think that's a really important thing that we haven't really touched on. It was discussed a little bit in the legislative regulatory item earlier, but I think there's a big problem that we need to get on the table. So how do you want to work this? You want to discuss each one or just suggest the list?
I think suggest the list.
Okay, the second item, reliability and resilience strategic plan. I think that's on the agenda for next month.
It was on this month, got punted.
Right, and I'd just like to ask that this discussion address both, so-called normal operation as well as emergency preparedness, our reliability and resilience under abnormal circumstances. The third one, which I think I proposed before, is gas utility strategic plan. There's a couple of items in here about gas rates and so on, but I don't see anything on the strategy for.
What about decommissioning, does that count?
Well, that's part of it, but I mean, we have this business that we say is shrinking and yet is throwing off a ton of cash for the city. And I think having a strategic plan for how we deal with all that is really important. And so I'd like to propose that as a topic to get the whole thing out, strategic plan, including the finance, including the greenhouse gas dimension, and just how we're going to manage this in a way that works out for everybody.
On that last one, how would you envision, or SCAP certainly has a role there. Ed and council certainly have a strong role there in terms of the financial implications of that throwing off of dollars. What kind of discussion and representation are you looking for?
I think it's like any other strategic plan. What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? In this case, over a period of, I would say, 20 years or some number like that, right? We're making investments on that kind of time frame. So what are our objectives over the time frame, taking into account the conflicts that you just raised, that we like having all this cash, and yet we are trying to talk everybody out of using the utility and providing that cash. So, first of all, what are we trying to achieve? And then what are some what do we think the external environment will be like? What are some alternative actions that we can take within that external environment to achieve the objectives that we set? And then which are the best actions?
Great.
So
Thank you for elaborating.
Standards, long-term strategic plan.
Any other items that we want to see agendized in the coming 12 months?
Just to make sure we don't, that it'd be good to put the reserve on, I'd like to
Yes.
see it on here, next time, the reserve strategy. And I don't know if that's part of a wider discussion, but I at least want to see understand the reserve strategy.
And debt financing strategy.
Can you elaborate what you're looking to hear? Because I heard a few different topics. One was, how do we manage the reserves? And then we talked about shrinking the number of reserves to a smaller.
So the answer is yes on all of those. And as well as the use of debt financing versus the use of cash reserves for anticipated future projects. What is the right number of reserves? I mean, we have a proliferation of them now. By combining them, could we reduce the need for the reserves? So all of it, basically.
And also the sloshing of funds from one reserve to another.
If that's part of the discussion, we've done it, we do it.
That's one that I find unnerving, so.
So yes.
I hope.
Yes, indeed, all of that.
Okay.
I would love to have, I don't see it on the future calendar, I'm sure it will come up at some point, but time of use rates, once we go live with that pilot, I'd love to calendar an update. I don't know when the right time it is, but since the calendar goes out 12 months, if we could pick a date and make sure that we get those updates so that we're.
We could ask all 100 customers to come and present. It's a small number.
Would ask us to present.
Okay.
If we're still looking for agenda items, we've talked, this came up at the start of today's meeting, and it's come up several meetings. It's not exciting because it's procedural process stuff. It's talking about the advisory role of UAC, how we communicate to council. This month, according to our rolling forecast here, council will be talking about gas COSA. So today's discussion will be in front of them, and again in December if that plan holds. And the question is, how does the work of the subcommittee and the discussion and the vote today get presented to council? Because I believe the way it typically works is it will be the staff that presents UAC's advisory, and I and several of us, or some of us have spoken before about how that ought to change. So will we agendize this advisory function and how we might want to improve it?
I'd be happy to have an offline conversation with you about what an agendized topic would look like in that space, how we would structure the discussion, what specific questions, who you would want to present, how much leeway there is in the charter of the UAC to modify that. But I think that would probably require quite a bit of further definition before I would know how to think about structuring that discussion, especially given that I'm not sure that that's a staff-led discussion. I think that would be a committee-led discussion if we were to choose to have one.
I'm happy to have an offline conversation, but we at UAC meetings have talked about this several times. Most recently I can think of is September, and we keep putting it off. And so in my view, the advisory function of the UAC just doesn't work the way it should. And we talk about talking about it.
So if I may interject as staff, I mean, there has been conversations in the UAC that you always have the opportunity to, as a group, decide that someone can present. That I think the mayor has also mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
So that is always your option as a body to do that and make that representation. So again, that is really up to this commission, and then who's going to represent and make sure you have your talking points, et cetera. So
Exactly. And we've talked about ways we could discuss that or handle that in the meeting.
So that, I'm just saying that is currently available to this commission if they choose to do so.
So for the specifics of the gas COSA, why don't we just have the subcommittee, which has invested all this work, talk to city council with it upcoming?
I think we could ask the gas subcommittee whether their 30 hours is the cap or whether they'd be willing to spend another 3.
Well, I think that the people I've talked with in city council, this is a limited subset, welcome the opportunity to hear directly, here's what staff says, here's what UAC says. And I mean, that's why
I'm happy to go on.
Me too. I mean, maybe we should discuss offline. I think there should be a representative from the subcommittee, not saying
fine.
somebody from the
No, I think a
general
subcommittee would be fabulous.
group, but, either you or I, or both of us, assuming we're on the same page and don't get into a fight in front of the council, would be good, because that's such a complex issue. And,
Absolutely, yeah.
we even saw here a lot of the questions that are likely to come up. I guess with, Chris, what you've brought up, I would like to see some structure. Maybe I'm the same way. I mean, it's like, okay, is there, maybe before even saying, yes, I'd like to see it, it's kind of, are there structured ideas about, that are potentially actionable that we could discuss, rather than say, well, it's broken, which, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
No, there are structured ideas. They're written down. I've written them down. They've been talked about. If we don't want to do them, then we don't want to, then fine, I will drop the topic, but we keep saying that we want to talk about it. Not only is Gas COSA on this list here for City Council in November, so are the preliminary FY27 rates we just talked about. So the whole discussion we just had, if you'd like to leave it to staff, as we have done for years, to go and present the discussion and summarize it and give the UAC's point of view, well, that's what's going to happen. And I guess the question is as simple as, do we want to keep doing it that way? Because I have voiced in a structured, written down way how we might do it differently.
Totally unsolicited and perhaps unvarnished. Just at a high level, maybe I can try and help give the UAC some ideas of how to get yourself out of this bind. So a couple things. At one point, I think the commission has to make a decision on, do you want to write your own policy and procedure about how you do this advocacy and what that advisory looks like? I'll be honest, that's a lot to get you all to write down something like this. What I'm hearing from Commissioner Tucker and frankly, many of the commissioners is there are instances where you may want to have a representative. And if that is the case, then there's nothing that stops the UAC from simply routinizing in your behavior of your discussions of these items on, do we want a representative, yes or no? And having that discussion as part of that item. I don't know that you need a policy and procedure for that. It's simply something you can talk about as a body when the item comes up. So I don't know that, if there's something beyond that the commission is looking for, I think to Chair Motter's point, greater detail on what specifically you want to agendize or talk about in terms of what quote unquote advisory means and looks like would be really helpful. But if you're simply talking about, the gas COSA is of interest and is someone going to rep us, just have that conversation as part of the agenda item.
I'll just summarize one aspect of the very short 3-point thing that I've written down. I think Gutzhoff has also stood behind this. Like to take the example of preliminary rates, when we finished that discussion, even though there was no vote, before moving on to the next item, we, the chair, would say, is this something that is even on the radar, on the agenda for council this month or next? In this case, it is. And we would say, was there anything so important in this last 45 minutes of hot air and discussion that we ought to go and put or represent or just sit there in the meeting if council wants to call on us? Yeah. Or do we do it the way we've always done it? I would recommend that we never close an agenda item without saying, do we need some advisory function in writing or in person? And then if the answer is yes to that, if we all think, yeah, we ought to send somebody, then we can discuss who should it be. Oh, well, it should be the gas COSA subcommittee guy or whatever.
I could just add a few points real quick. I know Chris and I had, I should say Commissioner Tucker and myself had conversations with our chair, and we did come to some conclusions on some just changes the chair would make in terms of like things like how do we address follow-up items. Sometimes during the course of a conversation or discussion on an agenda item, commissioner will seek a follow-up, and there was no clear process for that follow-up, and then many follow-ups kind of just were in the ether, and
Well, they stay in the minutes, don't worry, they're still in the minutes yourself.
or stay in the minutes and are left lingering. And so how can we better that process? And so I think there are a couple points we can discuss there. There's also the idea of doing perhaps more joint sessions with the city council on really large issues that are coming before us, and that might be like, for example, joint study sessions. So that's something we could talk about too in this agenda item. So I think there's a lot of great ideas here. I think maybe we can consider them and then maybe get something more concrete down as to what this agenda item could look like and encompass.
Okay, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, this, and I'll actually ask the mayor for his opinion, but what I'm hearing is you simply want a study session for you all to talk about this. Because you can't talk about this behind individually and then bring something forward because you are a Brown acted body. So, to have this discussion, which I'll be honest, we're bordering passing the realm of appropriateness for this agenda item tonight. Staff could bring forward a simple study session without a heck of a lot of prep, and you can have this discussion. But outside of that, I'm not quite sure how to support.
Why don't we take that recommendation, if staff would be so willing, and I don't know exactly what is entailed in a study session or how that is defined. Is that outside of a normal meeting and therefore?
No, it is an agenda item on your agenda, noticed like this to the public.
Great.
Where there's a topic and you all can chat.
Great. So we can figure out how to do that and how to individually prepare for that. I mean, I think staff could collect input from everybody and then summarize a set of recommendations or suggestions that people make. No? Okay. Then we can simply have an open study session.
Staff can absolutely collect feedback from commissioners.
That's what I was saying.
And transmit that.
Yes. That's what I was trying to say.
All roads go through Rome.
Exactly. So we can do that and have a broader discussion about procedural changes in the UAC, which I think is a healthy thing to do for anybody. No problem. Okay.
I had a comment.
Please.
Yeah, I was just going to make 2 points, and this is not meant to be discouraging in any way with what you talked about, but just underscoring the obvious, you are an advisory body.
Yes.
And all of these items that come here are debated and they're voted on, and sometimes we get 7-0 and sometimes we get 3-3, and those mean different things to us just by definition, even if no council member reads the packet item. They do, I'm just using exaggeration. Then, that tells us something, and that's your function is to advise us. So if you move in a more direction of having testimony directly to city council, I would be selective about that. It's not going to be on every item that comes to council, and have it focused, and it would be supplementary to the utilities staff that would present the packet. And it could agree or disagree as well,
So do you see the gas COSA, since you sat through discussion today, as something where it'd be useful to have a member of the subcommittee available to the council? So great, thank you.
I'm kind of surprised that's not going to finance first. It's probably because we don't have time.
It is, staff just hasn't corrected.
Oh.
Yeah, just as I'm one of the key proponents for this concept, I fully acknowledge that just because we send somebody to advise or report to council, we may not get called on. And I totally understand that it's, the UAC rep might go to the meeting and just be there on call. ask questions if, or answer questions if asked.
Okay.
That is the pattern for the PTC commissioner that is assigned monthly. And even at that, sometimes they choose not to come because they don't think they're going to add much value, so.
Okay. I'd like to move on to the last item, which is commissioner comments and reports from meetings and events. Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just had one last comment on the 12-month rolling calendar, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. This is just on the March item for water quality update. It would be great if we could also include Forever Chemicals and anything to do with wastewater with that one, if that's possible.
Water and wastewater are distinct utilities. I'm sorry, what are you?
With respect to the microplastics and Forever Chemicals issue, it's useful to look at it both from like a water supply and a wastewater perspective.
I think typically the water quality report is covered in the water item.
This is the March, the March item on this water quality, the specific water quality issue of microplastics.
So
Our water comes from Hetch Hetchy, and so I'm not sure how the bay discharge of microplastics is affecting our water supply.
Yeah, so I'm trying to better understand what your comment was.
Oh, sure. So the March 4th item in 2026 is a water quality update, regional sampling of microplastics.
Correct.
It would be great to kind of get a perspective if there is sampling of microplastics in our wastewater as well.
But that is a totally separate.
Oh, is this not a
No,
like?
it's water quality in terms of potable water quality, not water quality as in all the types of different, is it recycled water, is it potable water, is it wastewater, is it storm water?
Sure.
This is intended for potable water.
Okay, so this is going to be just as
correct.
Okay, I mean, I do have curiosity at some point about our wastewater too, if that could be agendized at some point.
So that would be, again, the intent of this is try to maintain and keep it with your goals and objectives. So you see me going through here, I go back to the work plan, right? So it's something that if there's an interest and it's not associated with this, that might be something you add to your additional work plan. So we want to make sure that we're meeting your goals and objectives associated with the work plan as established by the commission.
Sure. Did we excise wastewater from that work plan? From the water, because we had a discussion, I remember we had a discussion on microplastics.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to take this offline, if that's okay. It's just not of general relevance to the fact that it's already agendized, that the subtopic can be taken offline.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thanks. Are there any items related to commissioner comments and reports from meetings and events?
I had one update. I had a field trip to Hetch Hetchy with SFPUC. It was wonderful learning more about our amazing water system coming across the state via gravity. If you have an opportunity in the future to take that field trip with Bosca and SFPUC, I highly recommend it.
Great. Many of the commissioners have. It's a lot of fun. Okay, with that, we will adjourn, and thank you all for your time and attention today.